Chapter 1737. The Sword Master in Green Clothes. Lin Xiao and the others were dumbfounded. They had seen the man in green clothes before. Therefore they were dumbfounded when they saw the man in green clothes. He's here. The man is here. Yi Xian was also dumbfounded when he saw the man in green clothes. Why is my dad here? Moreover, Big Brother Yi has brought him here. What's going on? Meanwhile, the man in green clothes and the swordsman walked over to Yi Xian. The swordsman looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Are you talking about being invincible? Yi Xian was speechless. The swordsman looked at Yi Xian and smiled without saying a word. Yi Xian was slightly embarrassed. Did this big brother come because he heard me say that I'm invincible? Meanwhile, the man in green clothes suddenly said, What's wrong? Aren't you going to call me Dad? Yi Xian blinked. Dad, why are you here? The man in green clothes was about to speak when Sword Zhou and the others suddenly placed their swords between their eyebrows and bowed deeply. Their voices trembled as they said, Greetings, Sword Master. As Sword Zhou and the others bowed, the other swordsmen placed their swords between their eyebrows and bowed deeply as well. That was the highest bow a swordsman could give. Lin Xiao and the others hurriedly bowed respectfully as well. At this moment Lin Xiao and the others were trembling. Because when they looked at the man in green clothes, he was still as unfathomable as before. He was still unfathomable. The man in green clothes glanced at Sword Zhou and the others and smiled. There's no need to be so polite. All the swordsmen looked at the man in green clothes with eyes filled with admiration and respect. Faith. The man in front of them was their faith, including Sword Zhou and the others. At this moment, the 5 of them were extremely obedient and not mischievous like 5 children. The man in green clothes suddenly looked up into the sky, and then he pressed his fingers together and pointed lightly. A river of time split open in the distant starry sky, and then a ray of sword light appeared between the eyebrows of a middle-aged man. This person was the ancestor of the ancient celestial clan. Opposite the ancient divine clan ancestor, the heavenly air hall ancestor flashed and appeared in front of the green-clothed man. She bowed slightly and said respectfully, Greetings, Sword Master. On the other side, the ancestors of the Ghost Clan, Yen Clan, and Lin Clan also came to the green-robed man and bowed deeply. Greetings, Sword Master. The green-clothed man glanced at them, and then his gaze descended onto the ancestor of the Lin Clan, Lin Xiao. He smiled and said, Brother Lin Xiao, how have you been? Lin Xiao smiled. I never thought that I would be able to see you again. The green-robed man laughed heartily. I'm very happy to see you again even though this isn't your true bodies. Meanwhile, the ancestor of the Spectre clan suddenly knelt down slowly, whereas the green-clothed man raised his right hand lightly, and then the ancestor of the Spectre clan was lifted up by a strand of sword chi. The azure-robed man smiled and said, you, there's no need to do this. The ancestor of the Spectre race shook his head slightly. Thank you for saving our race, Sword Master. The azure-robed man smiled. You came to help my son, so we're even. The ancestor of the Spectre race hurriedly shook his head. No. My Spectre race will never forget Sword Master's great kindness. The azure-robed man laughed. There's no need to do this. Moreover, you came to help my good-for-nothing son, which is equivalent to repaying the debt of the past. Hearing this, Yi Xian's face suddenly darkened. What do you mean by a good-for-nothing son? Yi Xian said in a low voice. Father, I'm a little unconvinced by what you said. I'm now at the Heaven Ascension realm, invincible among my peers. The azure-robed man interrupted Yi Xian's words. Invincible among your peers? Can you take a sword strike from me? Yi Xian's expression froze. The azure-robed man blinked. As for the Heaven Ascension realm, little guy, do you know how weak the Heaven Ascension realm is? In the eyes of your father, the Heaven Ascension realm is similar to an ant. Yi Xian. Everyone's expression became unnatural. Because most of them were at the Heaven Ascension realm, the azure-robed man seemed to realize that his words were a little overboard. He laughed. Everyone, please don't mind me. What I said just now was only for my son, don't take it to heart. Yi Xian's face darkened. At this moment Xiao Ta's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Little master, can you tolerate this? Hit him. Don't be a coward. Yi Xian. When everyone heard the azure-robed man's words, they all smiled bitterly. At this moment the azure-robed man looked up at the ancient divine clan ancestor in the sky, and at this moment, The ancient divine clan ancestor was also looking at the azure-robed man. The ancient divine clan ancestor said in a low voice, "Your Excellency is unfathomable." The azure-robed man smiled slightly, and with a wave of his hand, the ancient divine clan ancestor was directly erased by a sword light. Forcibly erased. The azure-robed man looked at the heavenly palace ancestor. Seeing the azure-robed man look over, the heavenly palace ancestor immediately bowed deeply. "Please forgive me, Sword Master." The azure-robed man chuckled. "What wrong did you do to help my son?" The heavenly palace ancestor instantly heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. Actually, she was slightly panicked as well. After all, the heavenly palace had intended to kill Zhou Xian just now. The azure-robed man glanced at them and then he smiled. "I'll catch up with all of you later. Now allow me to deal with some matters first." All of them hurriedly nodded and then they moved behind the azure-robed man. The azure-robed man gazed at Zhou Xian and smiled. "Why's your face so gloomy? Are you not happy to see your father?" Zhou Xian glanced at the azure-robed man and smiled. "Father, what are you doing here?" As he spoke, he gazed at Swordsman. "Big brother, what are you doing here as well?" Swordsman smiled. "It's related to you." Zhou Xian was stunned and he was slightly puzzled. "It's related to me?" Swordsman nodded. "Yes." Zhou Xian was a little curious. "What's the matter?" Swordsman smiled. "I'll tell you later." Zhou Xian nodded. "All right." The azure-robed man sized up Zhou Xian then asked, "He gave you his entire life's worth of cultivation?" He was obviously referring to God Yi. Zhou Xian nodded. He hesitated for a moment, wanting to say something but holding back. The azure-robed man smiled. "You can't bear to see him die just like that?" Zhou Xian sighed softly. "I don't have the right to sympathize with him. If it weren't for you and Qing, I'd be the one dead." The azure-robed man nodded. "I'm glad that you can think of that. Everyone in the world can sympathize with him but not you." Zhou Xian nodded. The azure-robed man continued. "As for him, he's completely disappeared. In that sense, disappeared. Do you understand?" Zhou Xian nodded slightly. "I understand." The azure-robed man patted Zhou Xian's shoulder lightly. "You're similar to me in many ways but you're not ruthless enough. This world is far crueler than you think. If you're not ruthless, you won't be able to stand firm." Zhou Xian nodded. "I understand." The azure-robed man smiled. "It's good that you understand. This time I'm here for you." At that point he suddenly looked at the masked woman not far away and smiled. "Didn't you say that you want to perish together? Come on. Perish together." The moment she saw the azure-robed man, the masked woman's face turned abnormally pale. Her ancestor's soul was wiped out by the azure-robed man with a casual wave of his hand. Moreover, the few mortal Severing Realm powerhouses present were so respectful towards the azure-robed man. He was a real big shot. The masked woman slowly closed her eyes. She knew that the ancient divine clan had kicked an iron plate this time. After a moment, the masked woman looked at the azure-robed man. "Senior, this is the ancient divine clan's fault. I wonder if we can let this go?" The azure-robed man shook his head. "No." Hearing this, the masked woman's face instantly turned ferocious. "Then perish together. Incinerate." As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm, and a blood-colored talisman suddenly floated up from her palm. Seeing the blood-colored talisman, the expressions of Tianyi and the others changed drastically. Tianyi roared angrily. "What are you doing?" The blood-colored talisman. This was a talisman left behind by the ancient divine clan's founder, and it was the ancient divine clan's last resort. However, it was a taboo. This was because the ancient divine clan's founder had left behind an ancestral rule that using this talisman would result in the destruction of the entire clan. The destruction of the entire clan. Therefore, the ancient divine clan had never used this talisman all this time. The masked woman glanced at Tianyi. "Is there any other way?" Tianyi fell silent. Right now, the ancient divine clan really had no other way. Not to mention the mysterious azure-robed man. Just the people present were enough to destroy the ancient divine clan. There was no other choice. An indescribable rage suddenly arose in Tianyi's heart, and he looked at Zhou Xian and said angrily, "Zhou Xian, why didn't you tell me earlier that you had such a powerful backing? If you had, would I have targeted you?" Hearing Tianyi's words, everyone present was dumbfounded. Completely dumbfounded. Damn it, this is the patriarch of a superpower? Zhou Even Yi Xian was dumbfounded. What the hell? *CK, how did this retard become the head of the family? At this moment the masked woman suddenly looked at Tianyi with a cold gaze. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Actually, she felt a little sad at this moment. Why did Tianyi become the patriarch? Because he was the only descendant of the Tian family. Originally, she had a chance to become the patriarch, but the heavenly clan was different from other powers. It was a family power, so it was passed down to males and not females. After all, the entire family was afraid that the heavenly clan would become someone else's dowry in the future. Therefore, not many people supported her to become the patriarch. Moreover, the ancient divine clan didn't have any mortal enemies in the past, so they didn't feel threatened. Therefore, it was beneficial for everyone to have a mediocre person as the patriarch. However, no one had expected Tianyi to be such a good-for-nothing. In the distance, the azure-robed man smiled. Patriarch, interesting. The swordsman nodded. I don't think he's smart enough. The azure-robed man was speechless. Meanwhile, the blood-red talisman suddenly transformed into a ray of blood-red light and entered the figure that Tianyi had summoned. Boom. In an instant the figure was covered in blood. At the same time the bloodlines of all the heavenly clan experts began to tremble. Ancestral blood. Someone exclaimed, that's ancestral blood. The real ancestor. The person before them was the real ancestor of the ancient divine clan. It was this person who defied the heavens and changed his bloodline to create the ancient divine clan. All the heavenly clan experts seethed with excitement at the sight of this. However, right at this moment, countless heavenly clan experts suddenly self-destructed one after another, and their blood surged towards the blood-red figure like a torrent. The masked woman and Tianyi were stunned. What's going on? Countless heavenly clan experts didn't even have time to react before their bodies exploded, and their blood was absorbed by the blood-red figure. The reason why the masked woman and Tianyi were fine was because they didn't have physical bodies anymore. After absorbing the blood of countless heavenly clan members, the aura emanated by the blood-red figure grew stronger and stronger. At this moment, the entire ancient heavenly world was seething with excitement. This wasn't the aura of a mortal paragon at all. Meanwhile, the blood-red figure suddenly opened his eyes slowly. His eyes were like an ocean of blood and they were extremely terrifying. I'm alive. As soon as his voice resounded through the air, the entire ancient heavenly world shook violently as if an earthquake was occurring. Even the heavens and the earth were fearful. FPZW. Chapter 1738. At this moment, everyone on Yi Xian's side turned solemn, including Lin Shao and the other mortal realm experts, because at this moment fear rose in their hearts. There were not many people in this world that could make them feel fear. The calmest one was Yi Xian. Since his father had appeared, he would naturally be the one to shoulder the burden. At this moment, the masked woman in the distance suddenly said in a trembling voice, Ancestor. At this moment, the ancient divine clan was completely finished, because apart from her and Tianyi, the blood of everyone else had been devoured. And the experts of the ancient divine clan did not even have a chance to resist, because of the suppression of the bloodline. After absorbing the blood of the experts of the ancient divine clan, the aura of the bloody man became even more terrifying. An invisible pressure enveloped the entire ancient heaven world. At this moment, the bloody man turned to look at the masked woman and said in a hoarse voice, I once left an ancestral rule that unless there is no other choice, we are not to use this blood talisman. Tianyi suddenly said in a low voice, there is no other choice. The bloody man nodded slightly and turned to look at the green-robed man not far away. This was the first time he saw the green-robed man. When he saw the green-robed man, he was instantly stunned. The green-robed man smiled without saying a word. In the distance, Tianyi suddenly pointed at Yi Xian angrily. Ancestor, kill this person first. Our ancient divine clan is where we are today because of this person. Kill him. Yi Xian glanced at Tianyi and shrugged. Come and hit me then. Come and hit me then. Tianyi was so angry that he almost vomited blood. But the bloody man did not care about Yi Xian, his eyes were fixed on the green-robed man. Why can't I see through you? The green-robed man smiled. Maybe because you are weaker. Everyone, Tianyi suddenly laughed sinisterly. What a joke. Ancestor has already surpassed the mortal realm and you dare say that he is weak, you. The bloody man suddenly turned to look at Tianyi. How did you become the patriarch? Tianyi was shocked. He did not understand what the bloody man meant. The bloody man shook his head. Are you an idiot? Tianyi. On the other hand, the masked woman's face sank. The man continued. In the past I was wise and invincible. Why would I have a descendant like you? Misfortune befalls our family. Tianyi's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. The bloody man turned to look at the green-robed man. Your strength is unfathomable. I'm afraid I'm no match for you. However, I'm not willing to admit defeat like this. So please enlighten me. Yixian glanced at the bloody man. *CK. A normal person had finally appeared in the primordial divine race. At least his IQ was normal. Hearing the bloody figure's words, the green-robed man chuckled. Go ahead then. The bloody man made an inviting gesture and said, I'll take your sword first. The green-robed man shook his head. If I make a move, you won't be able to. So make your move. Everyone. The blood man looked at the green-robed man. After a moment of silence, he nodded and said, Then please enlighten me. As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly clenched his right hand. In the next moment, he suddenly appeared above the green-robed man, and then he swiftly slammed his palm down. Heaven burn annihilation. As soon as he finished speaking, a blood-red palm descended straight down from the top of the green-robed man's head. Moreover, this blood-red palm was actually condensed from the dimension of time. The dimension of time had materialized. Moreover, it wasn't just a single river of time but 10 rivers. This palm truly possessed the might to incinerate the heavens and annihilate the earth. Moreover, the expressions of everyone in the surroundings had become solemn when they saw this palm strike from the bloody figure. This palm strike was sufficient to instantly annihilate a true expert at the mortal severing realm. However, the green-robed man's expression was calm, and he suddenly drew his sword when the palm arrived above his head. A ray of sword light shot into the sky. Everyone watched as the blood-red palm transformed into nothingness. In the next moment, a sword was pressed against the center of the bloody figure's forehead. The surroundings instantly fell silent. On the other hand, the masked woman and the green-robed man were petrified on the spot. They couldn't even block a single sword strike. An expert at the mortal severing realm was actually unable to block a single sword strike from the green-robed man. At this moment, the masked woman and Tianyi's belief had collapsed. On the other side, Lin Xiao and the others couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He was still so terrifying. They'd thought that the green-robed man might be an expert above the mortal severing realm, but now it would seem like that wasn't the case at all. The sword master had far surpassed the mortal severing realm. He was too terrifying. The bloody figure in the sky spoke softly. I've lost. The green-robed man gazed at the bloody figure. You've taken the path of extremes. The bloody figure nodded. Yes. I thought I could control it, but I wasn't able to in the end. So, I sealed myself all those years ago and told my clansmen not to utilize the blood talismans. But I never expected that today's calamity would befall me. As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed. My primordial divine clan has come to this. I wonder if you can let me go. The green-robed man smiled. Bon voyage. As soon as he finished speaking, he slashed with his sword. The bloody figure was instantly slashed into pieces. He didn't give them any chance at all. Everyone gazed at the green-robed man when they witnessed this scene. At this moment, they finally understood why the members of the Sword Alliance were so ruthless. Motherfucker. Boss is ruthless. On the contrary, his son was a bit of a clown. Compared to the green-robed man, Yixian was indeed more mischievous. The green-robed man turned to look at the masked woman and the man in the distance. The masked woman had already accepted her fate and slowly closed her eyes. Even her ancestor had been killed with a single slash. What else could she do? She could only die. Tianyi glared at Yixian with fiery eyes as if he wanted to eat Yixian alive. Yixian was a bit confused. Please, you were the one who attacked me first, alright? Why do you look like I'm bullying you? Tianyi said fiercely. Why didn't you say so earlier that you had such a powerful father? Everyone. Yixian was a bit dumbfounded when he heard this. Holy shit, you're really a piece of work. Tianyi looked at the green-robed man and said fiercely, Your son is pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Aren't you going to do something about it? Yixian. The green-robed man gazed at Tianyi and smiled. Who asked him to have such a good father? If you're not convinced, then call your father out as well. Let's fight to the death. Yi Xian. Tianye's face froze. The green-robed man roared with laughter. I'm in a hurry, so I hope both of you have a safe journey. As he spoke, he swung his sword. A ray of sword energy instantly annihilated both Tianyi and the green-robed man. It was over. The ancient divine clan had been annihilated. A power that had existed for a few hundreds of thousands of years was gone just like that. Everyone sighed with emotion in their hearts. Meanwhile, Lin Xiao suddenly turned to look at the experts of the Lin clan. See that? This is the consequence of not keeping a low profile and being humble. All of you must remember to keep a low profile when you're outside in the future. The experts of the Lin clan nodded when they heard this. There was always someone stronger in the world. It was best to keep a low profile no matter the time. Meanwhile, the green-robed man gazed at Lin Xiao and the others and he smiled. Thank all of you for your assistance. As he spoke, he opened his palm and then 4 strands of sword energy floated over to Lin Xiao, the members of the Netherworld clan, Heaven Path Hall and Yen clan. The green-robed man smiled. All of you utilize the trump cards of your respective clans. Now I'll give all of you a new trump card. This strand of sword energy can resolve the danger your clans face. Lin Xiao and the others were overjoyed when they heard the green-robed man. This strand of sword energy was much more formidable than the souls of their ancestors. With this strand of sword energy here, it was like a deterrent force. Super deterrent. Who would dare to touch them? It was such a fucking good deal. The ancestors of the Lin clan were extremely happy when they saw the strand of sword energy. With this strand of sword energy here, their clans wouldn't have to face the danger of annihilation in the future. At the very least, they would have a chance to survive. Meanwhile, the green-robed man gazed at Sword Ju and the others. All of them were instantly delighted when they saw the green-robed man look over. Jianmu chuckled. Sword Master, we're all on the same side, so just give us some insights. Please don't hold back. All of them were speechless. Yi Xian glanced at Jianmu. This fellow is really shameless. The green-robed man roared with laughter when he heard Jianmu, and then he pressed his fingers together and pointed forward. 5 rays of sword energy shot directly into the center of their foreheads. Bang! In an instant their figures trembled violently. The green-robed man smiled. I've left a brand of the sword Dao within all of you. The stronger you are, the more the seal on the brand of the sword Dao will be undone. Their figures trembled when they heard this and then they bowed respectfully. Thank you, Sword Master. Needless to say, all of them were extremely excited at this moment. The brand of the sword Dao was equivalent to forcefully increasing the upper limits of their sword Dao. Moreover, it had even opened up a path for them. Could be said to be like giving them a new lease on life. The other swordsmen gazed at Sword Ju and the others with envy in their eyes. Meanwhile, the green-robed man turned around to gaze at the swordsman and he smiled. I'll leave a brand of the sword Dao within the Sword Alliance. All those who attain the Heaven Ascension realm will be able to obtain a brand of the sword Dao. All the swordsmen immediately bowed respectfully when they heard this, and they said in unison, Thank you, Sword Master. The eyes of Lin Xiao and the others were filled with envy. From today onward, the Sword Alliance would be unprecedentedly strong. The Sword Alliance would benefit the most from this. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly pulled on the green-robed man's sleeve, and then he gazed at Lin Xiao and the others. Lin Xiao and the others had suffered quite a huge loss this time, so giving them a strand of sword energy was a little too little. The green-robed man thought for a moment and then he opened his palm. An ancient book appeared in his palm, and then he pressed his fingers together and pointed forward. The ancient book suddenly transformed into 4 rays of white light that shot into the center of the foreheads of Lin Xiao and the others. The green-robed man said, It should be helpful to all of you. A short while later, Lin Xiao and the others suddenly became excited, and they hurriedly bowed respectfully to the green-robed man. Thank you, Sword Master. Obviously, what the green-robed man had given them was extremely helpful to them. The green-robed man grinned, and then he gazed at Lin Xiao and the others. Disperse. Lin Xiao and the others bowed slightly and then they vanished without a trace. The green-robed man gazed at Yi Xian. I think that you're living a little too comfortably, so I want to make your life a little more difficult. Do you have a problem with that? Yi Xian blinked. Can I refuse? The green-robed man smiled. You can't. Yi Xian's face darkened. The green-robed man suddenly withdrew his smile, and he spoke seriously. I came to look for you because I want you to do something for me. Yi Xian was quite curious. What is it? The green-robed man smiled. Miss Yi, come on out. As soon as he finished speaking, a woman in a white dress suddenly appeared not too far away from Zhou Xian. She was about to speak when Zhou Xian's face darkened. Father, I don't lack a wife. The woman's expression froze. The green-robed man suddenly kicked Zhou Xian's butt. I don't lack your grandma's head. What the hell is your head full of? After kicking Zhou Xian away, the green-robed man seemed to have thought of something. He smiled embarrassedly and then he slapped himself. Mother, don't take it to heart. I didn't mean to scold you. Damn it, I actually forgot that this bastard's grandmother is my mother. Chapter 1739. Lin Xiao and the others couldn't help but laugh when they saw the green-clothed man slap himself. This pair of father and son is too amusing. In the distance, Zhou Xian glanced at the woman called Yi He who was not far away from him. He had to admit that this woman was really beautiful. She could definitely be ranked in the top 3 amongst all the women he'd seen. Especially her eyes. Her pupils were crystal blue, like the stars in the night sky. They were especially attractive. Besides that, her figure was extremely good as well. Especially her waist, it was so slender that others couldn't help but want to wrap their arms around it and play with it. Zhou Xian felt quite embarrassed because he'd thought that his father was going to find another wife for him. So I was wrong. What a mess. How embarrassing. Yi He glanced at Zhou Xian and didn't say anything, but she was slightly vigilant in her heart. The green-clothed man glared at Zhou Xian. Kid, what the hell are you thinking all day long? This is Miss Yi He, don't be rude. Zhou Xian smiled embarrassedly, and then he cupped his fists as he gazed at Yi He. Miss, I was rude just now. I'm sorry. Yi He nodded slightly. It's not a big deal. Zhou Xian gazed at the green-clothed man and said seriously, Father, how are you going to trick me? Oh, I mean train me again? All the others were speechless. The green-clothed man shook his head and smiled. This fellow. Looks like he's living a comfortable life. That's why he's so mischievous. Zhou Xian was speechless. The green-clothed man glanced at Yi He and said, I have to take Miss Yi He to her hometown and help her deal with the trouble she's facing. Zhou Xian was quite puzzled. Trouble? The green-clothed man nodded. They've encountered some small trouble there. Small trouble? Yi He couldn't help but glance at the green-clothed man and she was quite confused. Is that a small trouble? Why did my grandfather ask me to look for this green-clothed man? This pair of father and son doesn't seem very reliable. She hesitated for a moment and was about to warn the green-clothed man. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly smiled. Father, will I get a reward if I go? The green-robed man smiled and said, yes. Zhou Xian quickly asked, what reward? The green-clothed man chuckled. I'll reward you with 2 big slaps. Zhou Xian was speechless. The man in green said with a smile, I was supposed to go but I just happened to have something to do. I need to go somewhere with Big Brother so you can only go in my place. Is there a problem? Zhou Xian asked. Little trouble? The green-robed man nodded. It's a very small problem. He looked at the green-robed man in shock. Zhou Xian thought for a moment and then he said, give me some rewards at least. After all, we're father and son, so I'm just showing my gratitude. The green-robed man glared at Zhou Xian. How can you be so shameless? The sword cultivator at the side suddenly said, like father, like son. The azure-robed man. Zhou Xian was speechless. Swordsman laughed. Give me a reward. Let him have some motivation. The green-robed man shook his head and smiled. He looked at Zhou Xian. If you help Miss Yi He solve the problem, I'll give you a surprise. Zhou Xian shook his head. Xiao Ta said that he likes to cheat people the most and has no integrity at all. So let's do something practical. Xiao Ta was stunned. At this moment the green-robed man opened his palm, and Xiao Ta appeared directly in his hand. Xiao Ta was about to speak but the green-robed man sneered. Xiao Ta, you're really arrogant now. With that he pointed with his fingers and the sword spirit in Zhou Xian's hand flew out. The green-robed man said, Sword spirit, accompany Xiao Ta to practice. The sword spirit turned into a sword ray and slashed Xiao Ta's body. Bam! Xiao Ta was instantly sent flying thousands of feet away, and the sword spirit quickly chased after him. In the sky, Xiao Ta wailed, Young master is not human. Yi Xian. The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian. What benefits do you want? Yi Xian said, I also want a sword Dao imprint. The green-robed man thought for a moment and then nodded. Brother Xiao, why don't we each give him a sword Dao imprint? The swordsman glanced at Yi Xian and nodded, sure. With that he pointed with his fingers and a sword ray entered between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom. Yi Xian's body trembled violently, and a sword Dao imprint was planted in Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. At this moment the green-robed man also pointed with his fingers, and a sword ray entered between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom. Another sword Dao imprint entered Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. However, both sword Dao imprints were sealed. The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian. From now on, every time you advance a realm, the sword Dao imprint will automatically unseal a layer. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Dad, as far as I know, you said that after ordinary swords there are no realms. But now there are many realms, can you explain? The green-robed man smiled. Our no realms is different from your understanding of no realms. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? The green-robed man sighed but did not speak. Yi Xian asked, why are you sighing? The green-robed man shook his head. My silly son, why are you so weak? In terms of martial arts, I don't have a common language with you. Yi Xian's face darkened. He almost wanted to hit someone. The green-robed man laughed. I won't explain too much. Right now I only have one goal, and that is to surpass my current realm. When that time comes, you will understand what I mean. Yi Xian glanced at the green-robed man and swordsman. How much longer do I need to catch up to you? The green-robed man blinked and smiled. What do you think? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, it should take another 1 or 2 years. 1 or 2 years. Swordsman's expression froze. The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian. Where did you learn to brag? I want to learn too. Yi Xian. The green-robed man smiled. All right. Let's not waste any more time. Big brother and I are leaving. We'll deal with the rest ourselves. Yi Xian was a little curious. Dad, where are you going? The green-robed man smiled. Although we're still very weak now, we're not that weak. We won't be easily killed by others. So we're going to a place far away. From now on we can only rely on ourselves. Yi Xian hesitated, then asked, Dad, are there any other forces? The green-robed man smiled. There are a few. Why? Yi Xian asked. Are there any stronger than the Sword League? The green-robed man said, there are only 2 that are stronger than the Sword League. Yi Xian quickly asked, which 2? The green-robed man smiled. The temple and, saying this he glanced at Yi Xian. Why are you asking this? Yi Xian grinned. I was just asking. The green-robed man glared at Yi Xian. Cultivate well, don't do those fancy things. Yi Xian quickly nodded. Okay. The green-robed man patted Yi Xian's shoulder, smiled. This time you're going with Miss Yi He alone, understand? Yi Xian glanced at the swordsman of the Sword League and nodded. I understand. Obviously his dad did not want the Sword League and the other forces to be involved in more grievances. This time the Sword League, the All Heavens Mansion and the other forces suffered losses. Really a lot. The green-robed man smiled. It's good that you understand. Saying this he looked at the swordsman. Brother Shao, let's go. The swordsman nodded. Okay. The green-robed man opened his palm. The sword spirit in the distant sky returned to his hand. He glanced at the sword spirit. A sword ray from his right palm entered the sword spirit. This action was not noticed by anyone except the swordsman, including Yi Xian. The green-robed man placed the sword spirit in front of Yi Xian, smiled. Remember, you can only rely on yourself. Yi Xian took the sword spirit, nodded. Dad, take care. The green-robed man laughed. He looked at Xiao Ta not far away. Xiao Ta, follow me? Yi Xian quickly nodded. Take Xiao Ta away. This guy only knows how to eat and not do anything. He also likes to insult others. Xiao Ta. The green-robed man stared at Yi Xian. He's not a good person either. Yi Xian. At this time Xiao Ta hesitated, then said, I will follow the young master. The green-robed man was a little curious. Why? Xiao Ta said, every time I see him in a miserable state I feel happy. Yi Xian immediately turned gloomy. What the f***c? The green-robed man laughed. Then follow him. After that he turned into a sword ray and disappeared into the horizon. The swordsman looked at Yi Xian. Let's go. After that he turned into a sword ray and disappeared into the horizon. Yi Xian looked at the horizon. He suddenly felt a little reluctant. This dad, he comes and goes as he pleases. After a while Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts. He looked at the battlefield and then said, Seniors, clean up the battlefield. Clean up the battlefield. Everyone immediately started to clean up the battlefield. Before long, Lin Xiao and the others arrived in front of Yi Xian. He handed 2 spatial rings to Yi Xian. Young master, this contains all the wealth and some divine items of the ancient divine clan, and the other spatial ring contains 2 sacred spring of eternal life. 2 sacred spring of eternal life. In the battlefield, everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian placed one of the spatial rings in Lin Xiao's hand. I will not take a single cent of the ancient divine clan's wealth, Elder Lin, distribute it to everyone here later. As for the eternal spring of eternal life, I'll keep one and leave the other in the all-heaven city for everyone to share. Alright? Lin Xiao hesitated for a moment and then he said, Young master, keep both of them. They're extremely precious, right? Yi Xian shook his head and interrupted Lin Xiao. Elder Lin, without your help Yi Xian wouldn't be able to resist the ancient divine clan at all. Not only did you put in a lot of effort this time, you even sacrificed many people. Share some of the wealth, especially those who sacrificed themselves. Give more to their families. As for the eternal spring of eternal life, leave it in the all-heaven city for everyone to share. If there are any eternal crystals, then we can share them. What do you think? Lin Xiao thought for a moment and then he nodded. Since you insist, then I won't say anything else. As he spoke, he glanced at the members of the Lin family behind him. Hurry up and thank the young master. The experts of the Lin family hurriedly bowed respectfully. Thank you, young master. At this moment, the experts of the Lin family were overjoyed. The rest of the experts also saluted. After all, there were quite a few treasures in the ancient divine clan. Meanwhile, Lin Xiao suddenly smiled. Young master, do you want to take a look at the treasures of the ancient divine clan? Yi Xian said with a smile. No more. Lin Xiao smiled. It's fine to take a look. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. Then he glanced at it. His expression changed instantly. Yi Xian grabbed Lin Xiao's hand and spoke seriously. Elder Lin, can I take back what I just said? Everyone. Chapter 1740. Seeing everyone stunned, Yi Xian burst out laughing. I was just kidding. Hearing this, Lin Xiao and the others heaved a sigh of relief. As for Yi Xian's heart, it was bleeding. But this was too much. The treasures and wealth of the ancient Heaven clan weren't ordinary. After all, it was a superpower that had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. How could their wealth be ordinary? Of course, he wouldn't be jealous or go back on his word. These people had risked their lives for him, Yi Xian. Not to mention this bit of wealth, even if it was 10 times more, he would still be willing. After a while, Yi Xian looked around, then looked at Yi He. Miss Yi He, I need 3 days, is that okay? Yi He hesitated, then said, okay. It's just that, young master Yi, our troubles might. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Didn't Dad say it was just a small trouble? Yi He. Within the prison pagoda, Xiao Ta sneered inwardly. Young master, this fool, does he think the small trouble in master's eyes is the same? Moreover, even master thinks it's a small trouble. Wait for death. Wait for death. I'll bury him. Yi He was speechless. This father and son pair didn't seem very reliable. Could this fellow really solve the problem if he went back with him? Yi Xian didn't ask. He was already at Heaven Ascension realm. Who was he afraid of? Invincible in the same realm. Instant kill with 1 sword. If 1 sword wasn't enough, then 2. 2 at most. Thinking of this, Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh. He seemed to have gotten a little arrogant. After a while, everyone left. At this moment, Mo Qingran and Tai Yu appeared. Looking at the ancient Heaven clan, their eyes flashed with a trace of complexity. A superpower that had lived for hundreds of thousands of years was gone just like that. Because of a retarded family head. Tai Yu said softly, Tian Yi. Saying this, he shook his head and sighed. Mo Qingran smiled. Actually, it's not all his fault. Tai Yu looked at Mo Qingran. The latter said, his sister is much more outstanding than him. But she can't become family head? Why? Because it was not in line with the interests of those elders. In times of peace, a good-for-nothing patriarch was in line with everyone's interests. Actually, this is normal. For so many years, apart from the 3 of us, almost no one has dared to provoke the ancient divine clan, including the All-Heaven City and the Sword Alliance. In a one-on-one fight, he wouldn't be a match for the ancient heavenly race. It's just that I didn't expect that. Yi Xian. As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. Not to mention him, Even we didn't expect Yi Xian to be able to unite the forces of the entire All-Heavens city. Not only that, but his backing is also so powerful that the number of people he has increased. Tai Yu nodded. This Yi Xian has indeed exceeded all of our expectations. Mo Qingran said softly, I have to reconsider my successor. Great Nether looked at Mo Qingran. Selection? Mo Qingran nodded. This time the ancient heaven race has given us a wake-up call. If a good-for-nothing becomes the person in charge, it will really bring about the danger of extermination to the sect. Great Nether nodded. Indeed. Mo Qingran looked around and sighed again. Hundreds of thousands of years of inheritance scattered in one day. Great Nether smiled. Tell me about that green-robed man? Hearing this, Mo Qingran's expression became solemn. Great Nether smiled. We are still very weak. Mo Qingran smiled bitterly. Indeed. Yi Xian returned to the Sword Alliance. In a courtyard, Yi Xian looked at Zhang Wenxiu and Enlanxiu. How about you stay in the Sword Alliance and cultivate? Zhang Wenxiu curled his lips. Do you think we will be a burden? Yi Xian smiled. If you want to go together, that's fine too. Zhang Wenxiu shook his head. We can't help if we follow them now. Let's go. Yi Xian nodded. All right. Enlanxiu suddenly said softly, Too fast. Too fast. Actually, she was already working very hard. But no matter how hard she worked, it was difficult to catch up to Yi Xian's footsteps. She had already surpassed Yi Xian earlier, but Yi Xian suddenly ascended to the heavens. This was too absurd. Yi Xian looked at Enlanxiu and smiled. Spar? Seal Division Cultivation. Enlanxiu looked at Yi Xian. Are you sure? Yi Xian nodded. I'm sure. Enlanxiu nodded. All right. The two of them arrived at a martial arena. The arena was very large, hundreds of meters in length and width, and the space around it was reinforced. Yi Xian looked at Enlanxiu and smiled. Come. Enlanxiu suddenly vanished on the spot, and at the instant she vanished, Yi Xian suddenly stabbed out with his sword. Bang. As soon as the sword and spear collided, the arena beneath their feet instantly trembled. At this moment, Enlanxiu suddenly raised her gun and stabbed forward. Although her cultivation was sealed, Enlanxiu's spear was still swift like lightning. Yi Xian didn't choose to clash head-on this time. Instead, he lightly tapped the tip of his feet, and his entire body floated backwards. Enlanxiu's spear pierced the air, and a sharp sound of air being torn apart suddenly sounded out. But right at this moment, Enlanxiu's left foot took a large stride forward, and the spear in her hand was pulled back. Her body spun on the spot and the spear left her hand. The sound of air exploding resounded. In the distance, Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. This time he didn't choose to dodge, but leaped up and fiercely slashed out with his sword in both hands. Bang! Enlanxiu's spear was forcefully stopped. But at this moment, Enlanxiu suddenly flashed and she directly kicked the spear's handle. Bang! The sword in Yi Xian's hand trembled violently, and his entire body retreated several tens of meters away along with his sword. Yi Xian had just stopped when Enlanxiu suddenly vanished on the spot. Swift like the wind, a spear tore through the sky and pierced straight towards the center of Yi Xian's brows. Yi Xian raised his sword horizontally to block it. Bang! Yi Xian retreated another few meters. He hadn't even stopped when Enlanxiu suddenly tossed her spear forward. Another spear arrived. Yi Xian didn't retreat and he still chose to go head-on against her. He held his sword with both hands as he slashed forward. If he took a step back when facing Enlanxiu, then he would be constantly retreating. Enlanxiu wouldn't give him the slightest chance to catch his breath. He could only go head-on against her. Along with this slash of Yi Xian's sword, an explosion suddenly resounded, and Enlanxiu's spear was directly blasted flying. Meanwhile, Enlanxiu suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and she directly smashed her fist towards Yi Xian's chest. Yi Xian abandoned his sword and smashed his fist forward. He had no choice but to abandon his sword because the distance between them was too close, and it was too late to withdraw his sword and stab again or defend. Bang! A sharp explosion suddenly resounded and then both of them retreated explosively repeatedly. Both of them stopped after retreating over 30 m, and both of them didn't attack again. Enlanxiu gazed at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Let's consider it a draw." If they wanted to determine the victor, then they really had to utilize killer moves. Moreover, both of them obviously wouldn't utilize killer moves. And Lan Xiu nodded lightly. Shall we go? Yi Xian nodded. Both of them walked along the arena towards the distance. And Lan Xiu's dress was white as snow and it was spotless. And Lan Xiu lightly combed her beautiful hair behind her ear and said in a light voice, I want to return to Azure County. Yi Xian stopped moving and then he turned around to look at Lan Xiu. You're leaving? And Lan Xiu nodded lightly. I'm unable to help much. Yi Xian gazed at Lan Xiu. All along the way too many people have left. Are you leaving as well? And Lan Xiu didn't speak. Yi Xian said in a light voice, Little An, you're the first girl I've met that moved my heart. And Lan Xiu looked at Yi Xian and still didn't speak. Yi Xian said with a smile, The first time I saw you in Qingqing I was moved. However, at that time I only wanted to save my younger sister. Later on I helped a lot. As he spoke he shook his head and smiled. Little An, it's a little pretentious to say anything else. I want to accompany me to the end of my journey. I promise that after everything is over we'll return to Azure County. Can I? And Lan Xiu looked at Yi Xian. You'll go back, right? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. And Lan Xiu said in a light voice, I'm a little tired from chasing. Yi Xian said with a smile, Do you want to be stronger than me? And Lan Xiu shook her head. I just want to help. However, my enemies are getting stronger and stronger. Many times I'm just a burden. Yi Xian said with a smile. Many times I feel that I'm a burden. And Lan Xiu said in a light voice, It's a little better now. Yi Xian nodded. This period of time was better, but this was also because he had reached the heaven ascension boundary. Yi Xian said with a smile, Continue walking with me. If there's no Linger and you on the road ahead I'll be very lonely. With you here my life has meaning. And Lan Xiu looked at Yi Xian for a moment and nodded. Yi Xian said with a smile, Will you accompany me this time? And Lan Xiu shook her head. I'm going into seclusion. Yi Xian was stunned. Breaking through? And Lan Xiu opened her palm. In her hand there was an ancient book. Yi Xian was somewhat curious. This is? And Lan Xiu said, This was left to me by my father. Father? Yi Xian blinked. When did he leave it to you? And Lan Xiu said, When we left. Yi Xian was somewhat speechless. He actually didn't know. And Lan Xiu looked at Yi Xian. When we return I'll give you a surprise. Yi Xian was somewhat curious. What surprise? And Lan Xiu said, You'll know when we return. Yi Xian. After the two chatted for a while and Lan Xiu continued to cultivate, while Yi Xian returned to the Undying Emperor clan. Inside the hall, Dongli Yasuo looked at Yi Xian with a complex look in her eyes. This growth speed. Yi Xian smiled. Then he took out a storage ring and placed it in front of Dongli Yasuo. Dongli Yasuo glanced at the storage ring. In the next moment she stood up, her eyes filled with disbelief. This, Yi Xian said with a smile, Saint rank spring of eternal life. It's even better than the one in the eternal world. From now on, our Undying Emperor clan has our own spring of eternal life. Dongli Yasuo looked at Yi Xian. Our Undying Emperor clan? Yi Xian said with a smile. I, Yi Xian, will be a member of the Undying Emperor clan for all eternity. One should never forget one's roots. He would never forget how the Undying Emperor clan had treated him, Yi Xian. As he said, he, Yi Xian, would be a member of the Undying Emperor clan for all eternity. Dongli Yasuo smiled. At this moment her heart was very warm. Compared to Yi Xian's words, the spring of eternal life in front of her didn't seem so important anymore. She had gambled correctly. She had not misjudged him. After chatting with Dongli Yasuo for a while, Yi Xian left. Somewhere in the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword. Beside him was Yi He. Yi He's eyes were filled with faint worry. Her grandfather had asked her to call for reinforcements, but she found that this father and son pair were each more unreliable than the other. Especially this Yi Xian. Did he know what he was facing? Why was he so confident? Where did his confidence come from? Or could it be that this guy was a super expert who had surpassed the mortal realm? Was he just pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? P.S. I forgot to ask for votes yesterday. A huge loss. At least a few thousand. Chapter 1741. In the starry sky, Yi Xian was riding his sword, his eyes slightly closed. He was looking at the two sword imprints left behind by his elder brother and father. However, the two sword imprints were sealed. He couldn't open them at all. Yi Xian was somewhat helpless. It seemed that he could only open them when he reached the mortal severing realm. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at Yi He. Miss Yi He, do you know my father? Yi He shook her head. My grandfather knows him. Yi Xian nodded slightly. What happened to your family? She said, it's our realm. As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, what realm are you in now? Yi Xian smiled. Ascend to the heavens. Ascend to the heavens. Yi He hesitated and then said, true realm? Yi Xian blinked. This. What do you mean by asking this? He said, I'm just asking. There's no other meaning. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Miss Yi He, is the trouble you've encountered very big? Yi He nodded. For us it's quite big, but for young Master Yi, it should be a small trouble. Hearing this, Yi Xian's heart immediately relaxed. That's good. Yi He glanced at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, you can actually reach the Heaven Ascension realm at this age, really monstrous. May I ask, how did you do it? In fact, she was really curious. Because even if Yi Xian advanced a level every year since he was born, it was impossible to reach the Heaven Ascension realm at this age. Especially some realms could not be fast. And Yi Xian reached the Heaven Ascension realm at such a young age, even in their place it was very, very rare. No, it was basically none. Yi Xian laughed. Miss Yi He, is it rare to see such a young Heaven Ascension realm in your place? Yi He nodded. Almost none. So, seeing young Master Yi reach the Heaven Ascension realm at such a young age, I'm a little curious. Yi Xian smiled and said, this? Yi He looked at Yi Xian. Is it inconvenient for you to say it? Yi Xian smiled and said, Miss Yi He, have you ever seen a true peerless genius? It's the kind that no matter what kind of martial technique or mental cultivation method it is, you can learn it with just a glance, and no matter what bottleneck it is, you can break through it with just a night's sleep. Yi He blinked. I've never seen this before. Yi Xian pointed at himself and said seriously, Miss Yi He has seen it now. Yi He was stunned. Within the prison pagoda, Xiao Ta shook his head. So a person can be shameless to such an extent. Yi He looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, is what you said true? Yi Xian said seriously, of course. I never lie. Xiao Ta. Yi He hesitated for a moment, then said, there's actually such a genius in this world. I've learned something. Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, can you do me a favor? Yi Xian was curious. What favor? Yi He took out an ancient book and handed it to Yi Xian. This is my Yi clan's supreme mental cultivation method, but there are some parts one don't understand. Young Master Yi, please take a look and teach me. Yi Xian. Xiao Ta suddenly laughed. Let's see how you act. Yi He looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, can I? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, Miss Yi He, this is your Yi clan's supreme mental cultivation method. Do you really want to show it to an outsider like me? Yi He smiled slightly. This mental cultivation method may be precious to others, but to young Master Yi it's not worth mentioning. Yi Xian smiled and said, if that's the case, then I'll take a look. Saying that, he picked up the ancient book and started reading. Yi He just looked at Yi Xian. She naturally wouldn't believe Yi Xian so easily. How could there be such a genius in this world? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly returned the ancient book to Yi He. I've finished reading. Yi He was stunned. Finished reading? Yi Xian nodded. I've finished reading. Yi He glanced at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, please advise me. Yi Xian smiled and said, then I'll be frank. Saying that, he pointed at the ancient book. Miss Yi He, your Yi clan's mental cultivation method, I don't think you need to cultivate it. Yi He looked at Yi Xian. What do you mean? Yi Xian smiled and said, it means it's very trashy. Yi He was speechless. Yi Xian sized up Yi He. Miss Yi He, may I ask, you're currently in the Void Realm, but how many years have you cultivated? Yi He said, nearly 400 years. 400 years. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. My God, I really couldn't tell. This girl is actually over 400 years old. Of course, in front of a cultivator, age is actually meaningless. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and said seriously, Miss Yi He, the upper limit of your Yi clan's mental cultivation method is too low, to the extent that you only reach the Void Realm after cultivating for an entire 400 years. Yi He looked at Yi Xian. The upper limit is low? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Miss Yi He, under normal circumstances, if you cultivated my Yang clan's mental cultivation method, then you should have attained the Heaven Ascension realm by now. Yi He glanced at the mental cultivation technique in her hand and said, Young Master Yi, Can you tell me why this mental cultivation technique's upper limit is low? Yi Xian smiled. Miss Yi He, I think it's meaningless for us to discuss this. I'll show you a sword technique I created and you'll understand. As he spoke, he drew his sword and swung it forward. A ray of light suddenly tore through the air, and then a deathly silent region in the distance was instantly obliterated inch by inch. Life and death were decided by drawing the sword. Everything was obliterated by this attack. The deathly silent region was obliterated once more, and then it returned to nothingness. Yi He's face instantly became solemn when she saw this attack. Yi Xian gazed at Yi He and smiled. Miss Yi He, what do you think? Yi He spoke solemnly. Young Master Yi, did you really create this sword technique? Yi Xian nodded. Of course. In this world besides me, who else can create such an awesome sword technique? Yi He. Within the prison pagoda, Xiaota shook her head. Shame. Truly shameless. I Xiaota have never seen such a shameless person. In front of Yi Xian, Yi He took a deep look at Yi Xian. I've underestimated young Master Yi. Needless to say, she was extremely shocked at this moment. In the beginning, she'd thought that even though Yi Xian was at the Heaven Ascension realm, he'd probably use some secret technique to advance. It was fake. That was what she'd thought at the beginning. But when she saw Yi Xian's attack just now, she was truly shocked. The young man in front of her was actually able to create such a shocking sword technique. His talent was so terrifying that it was unprecedented. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Miss Yi He, what do you think of my sword technique? Yi He said in a low voice. Powerful. Yi Xian laughed. Actually, it's just average. I have an even more powerful sword technique. Yi He looked at Yi Xian. There's an even more powerful one? Yi Xian nodded. That's right. It's extremely powerful and can only be used when there's no other choice, because once it's used, the galaxy will vanish into nothingness, and the universe will collapse. Yi He blinked. It's that exaggerated? Yi Xian waved the sword in his hand. Just now I only used 30% of my strength. If I use my full strength, Yi He fell silent. 30% strength. If this guy in front of her wasn't lying, then this sword technique was just too terrifying. This sword technique could most likely instantly kill a Paragon Realm expert. Thinking of this, she looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, if you used your full strength in that sword technique just now, could you instantly kill a Paragon Realm expert? Yi Xian laughed. Paragon Realm? They're just ants. Yi He, in the prison pagoda, Xiaota shook his head again. This young master is so arrogant that he almost can't recognize himself. I feel like something big is about to happen. The two continued forward. Along the way, Yi He's expression was extremely serious. She was a little shocked. Comparing oneself to others was really infuriating. She had cultivated for hundreds of years to reach the nothingness realm, but he had only used 20 years to reach it. Moreover, he was able to create such a shocking sword skill. What a monster. He was truly a monster. Yi He sighed in her heart. In the past she was considered a monster in her place, but now she suddenly realized that compared to this young Master Yi, she was just trash. Yi Xian suddenly laughed. Miss Yi He, do you have many Paragon Realm elites on your side? She said. Not especially many, but not a few either. Not a few. Yi Xian caught the main point and looked at Yi He. Miss Yi He, how many do you mean by not a few? Yi He smiled and said, that means that each faction has about one transcending mundane realm elite. Of course, this is nothing to young Master Yi. Yi Xian hesitated and then said, as long as it's not too many. Actually, he quite wanted to fight against Paragon Realm elites. In this period of time he had improved quite a lot, and Heaven Ascension Realm elites could no longer satisfy him. After all, he could now easily kill Heaven Ascension Realm elites. Only a fight between Paragon Realm elites would be a little interesting. At this time Yi He suddenly asked, young Master Yi, even elites above Paragon Realm shouldn't be much of a threat to you, right? Yi Xian hesitated and then said, not much of a threat, Miss Yi He. Why do you suddenly ask this question? Yi He smiled slightly. I'm just a little curious, no other meaning. Hearing this, Yi Xian immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Yi He suddenly pointed to a black whirlpool in the distance. Young Master Yi, this is a time transfer array. After passing through this array, we will arrive. Yi Xian couldn't help but ask, Miss Yi He, is your trouble really that big? Yi He smiled. For us it's a little big, but for young Master Yi it shouldn't be big. Let's go. As she spoke, she directly turned into a stream of light and submerged into the time transfer array. Yi Xian was a little hesitant. Intuition told him that things didn't seem to be that simple. After a moment, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Didn't father already say? Just a little trouble. Little trouble. Yi Xian laughed and directly turned into a sword light and submerged into the time transfer array. Chapter 1742. After entering the time transmission array, Yi Xian was rather shocked. Time transmission array. This was his first time seeing it. The time dimension previously was somewhat illusory and very difficult to materialize. But the transmission array here not only materialized it but could also transform it and make use of it. Not simple. Because he was already at the Heaven Ascension realm now and even cultivated out a time dimension. But even he himself found it hard to transform this time dimension. He had thought of condensing this time dimension into a sword, but it was a little difficult. However, he felt that it should be possible. At this time he suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, we're almost there." Yi Xian looked into the distance. He was rather curious. "Miss Yi, what's that place of yours called?" Yi said, "Primordial Realm." Primordial Realm. Yi Xian's brows furrowed slightly. He had never heard of it before. Yi said with a smile, "Our place is very far from the All Heavens City. If there's no time dimension transmission array, even severing realm powerhouses will find it hard to reach our place too." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "The universe is really infinitely big." Yi nodded. "The boundless universe is boundless and boundless. Nobody knows the end either." Yi Xian nodded. Actually, the universe was so big he wanted to go and take a look too. He already thought it through. After the matters of the primordial realm were settled, he would bring in Lanxiu and Zhang Wenxiu as well as Linger to go and see everywhere. Fighting every day and whatnot, he was already sick of it. Strolling around everywhere, posturing, flirting with girls, this kind of life was pretty good. Right at this time, a streak of white light appeared in the spatial transmission channel in the distance. Yi said, "We're here." Finished talking, she and Yi Xian already passed through the white light and appeared in a stretch of sky. And the moment Yi Xian came out, he was immediately stupefied. In front of them stood thousands of people. Among them, the lowest was Endless Realm, and there were actually close to 100 Heaven Ascension realms. Not only that, there were more than 30 Severing Realm powerhouses too. Yi Xian was somewhat dumbfounded. So many Heaven Ascension realms and Severing realms? And at this moment, everyone present was looking at Yi Xian, their eyes full of doubt. Yi suddenly walked in front of an old man. "Grandpa, I've brought her back." The old man glanced at Yi Xian. "Did you bring the wrong person?" Yi shook his head. "That green-robed sword master said he was busy, so he sent his son here." "Son?" The old man looked at Yi Xian. "Little friend, you're the son of the green-robed sword master?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man said with a trembling voice, "That's the young master. Greetings, young master." As he spoke, he bowed slightly. Seeing the old man salute, the rest of the people were stunned for a moment before they followed suit. However, their eyes were filled with doubt and confusion. This was because they did not know the azure-robed sword master. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Everyone, there's no need to be so courteous." The old man glanced at Yi Xian, a hint of surprise flashing across his eyes. "Young lord has reached the Heaven Ascension boundary." As he spoke, he stroked his beard and smiled. As expected of the sword master's son. He's extraordinarily outstanding. Heaven Ascension boundary. Hearing the old man's words, everyone's eyes flashed a trace of shock. To reach the Heaven Ascension boundary at such a young age, this was not simple. Yi Xian looked at the old man in front of him and said with a smile, "Senior knows my father?" The old man nodded. "I met the sword master by chance." As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. "If it wasn't for the fact that there was no other way, I wouldn't have bothered the sword master." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "What trouble?" He suddenly felt that something was wrong. The old man said in a low voice, "Young lord, follow me." Under the lead of the old man, the group walked into the distance. On the way, Yi Xian learned that the old man's name was Yi Yuan, the patriarch of the Yi clan. And the Yi clan was the second greatest force in the Yuan realm. In the Yuan realm, there were 3 great forces. Among them were the Yi clan, the Shao clan, and the Yuan clan. And here there were 12 spirit-level Spring of Eternal Life, which was why there were so many Yuan-level experts. But this also brought disaster to the Yuan realm. 12 spirit-level spring of eternal life. This was too tempting. Yi Yuan brought Yi Xian to the Yi clan's main hall. Yi Yuan said in a low voice, "The Beast Demon clan has been blocked outside the Great Wall of Heaven Mountain by our joint forces. But the situation is not good, because we are relying on a powerful formation to block them outside. If the formation is broken, our chances of winning will be very small." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "The Beast Demon clan?" Yi Yuan hurriedly explained, "It was originally the Beast Demon clan and the Beast Demon clan, and both are extremely powerful. But before this, these two clans were like fire and water, hostile to each other, so our Yuan realm was peaceful. And not long ago, one person unified the Beast Demon clan and the Beast Demon clan." "Unified the Beast Demon clan and the Beast Demon clan?" Yi Xian asked. "Who?" Yi Yuan shook his head. "I don't know. We only know that the Beast Demon clan and the Demon clan have been unified and merged into the Beast Demon clan. And after they merged, they directly launched an invasion on our Yuan realm." Yi Xian was silent. "Damn. This doesn't seem like a small problem. Coming alone, it seems like it was a little rash." Yi Yuan smiled. "But now that the young master is here, we don't have to worry at all." Yi Xian. Yi Yuan looked at Yi Xian. "Young master has a trump card, right?" Yi Xian blinked. "What trump card?" Yi Yuan's expression froze. "Young master? You really came alone? Of course, I don't mean to look down on young master, but the Beast Demon clan is really powerful. In the same level, human experts are no match for them. If young master is alone." Yi Xian was speechless. "Damn. Didn't Dad say it was just a small problem? What kind of father would trick his son like this? He was trying to kill him. And now he was a little annoyed. If he were to leave now, it would be too humiliating for him. If he didn't leave, he felt that he would be killed." Yi Yuan looked at Yi Xian and said cautiously, "Young master?" Yi Xian collected his thoughts, looked at Yi Yuan and smiled. "Don't I still have you guys?" Yi Yuan hesitated, wanting to speak but hesitating. Yi Xian smiled. "Senior, you won't put all your hopes on others, right?" Yi Yuan smiled bitterly. "Of course not, it's just that, young master, if you are alone, it may be a little dangerous." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Then I'll go back?" Hearing this, Yi Yuan was stunned. Everyone present was also stunned. This young master seemed to want to escape. At this moment, Yi suddenly said, "Grandfather, you don't know young master is a rare super genius that appears once in a million years. Although he is only at the Heaven Ascension realm, he can kill absolute mortal realm experts like killing dogs. Even experts above absolute mortal realm in front of him are just ants." Yi Xian's expression froze. He looked at Yi, his face full of shock. "Have I ever boasted about myself like that? Have I ever said such a thing?" He can't remember. Hearing Yi's words, Yi Yuan looked at Yi Xian. "Young master, can you really kill someone in the end of the mundane realm so easily?" Yi also looked at Yi Xian. There was even a hint of admiration in her eyes. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, "My father told me that I have to be low-key. Hearing this, Yi immediately smiled. "Then you can." As expected of the sword master's son, huh? Yi Xian was a little confused. How did this old man understand what I said? Did I say I can? At this moment, a black-robed old man suddenly appeared in the hall. The black-robed old man bowed slightly to Yi Yuan and was about to speak, but Yi suddenly said, "Greetings, young master. In the future, my Yi clan will follow young master's lead." Hearing Yi Yuan's words, the Yi clan experts present were somewhat shocked. Follow young master's lead. Some of the elders wanted to say something, but they were stopped by Yi Yuan. Their clansmen hadn't seen the green-clothed sword master, so they didn't know how terrifying he was, but he knew. That was a godlike man. The son of such a terrifying man was definitely not an ordinary person. The black-robed old man bowed slightly to Yi Xian. "Greetings, young master." Yi Xian was speechless. The black-robed old man spoke in a low voice. "Patriarch, young master, the beast race has just launched a new round of attacks and we've suffered slightly heavy losses. 6 Heaven Ascension Realm experts have died, and over 30 Void Realm experts have died." Yi Yuan spoke in a low voice. "What about the other side?" The black-robed old man hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Not a single Heaven Ascension Realm expert has died, and only 2 Void Realm experts have died." The faces of everyone here sank when they heard this. Yi Xian's expression was slightly unsightly as well. Isn't the difference in combat strength between the two sides too huge? 6 Heaven Ascension Realm experts have died, but not a single enemy has died. What the hell is this? He's trying to slip away again. At this moment Yi Yuan looked at Yi Xian. Young master, what do you think? Everyone in the hall looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment and then he said, the entire Yuan realm has joined forces? Yi Yuan nodded, yes. Yi Xian asked again, are we united? Yi Yuan said, of course we are united. If we still harbor ulterior motives at this time, then we can only wait for death. Yi Xian said in a low voice, but the gap in combat strength is still huge, right? Yi Yuan said in a low voice, the difference between the top experts is not great and we even have more, but the difference in battle strength is a little big because the physical bodies of those demonic beasts are very strong. A Heaven Ascension Realm demonic beast can basically fight against 2 human Heaven Ascension experts. Yi Xian asked again, the experts below are the same. Yi Yuan nodded. The gap in combat strength was too huge. Yi Xian fell silent. It was not easy to deal with. He should have brought the Sword Alliance. The Sword Alliance's combat strength should be able to fight against these demon beasts. However, he did not want to drag the Sword Alliance down with him. After all, this matter did not have much to do with the Sword Alliance. As for him, he definitely would not leave. Since his father had asked him to come here to help, it was certainly not that simple. Because if it was an ordinary friendship, his father would definitely not let him come. And if he left, he would not only lose his face but also his father's. At this time, the black-robed old man said in a low voice, the Beast Demon Clan has launched an attack again. Yi Yuan looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian got up. Then let's go. Let's go see. Everyone got up. At this time, Yi He walked over to Yi Xian's side. She gently pulled Yi Xian's sleeve and then whispered, will you kill the Beast Demon Clan in a second? Yi Xian. Piss, the weather suddenly turned cold. It's too cold. Everyone keep warm. I really don't want to get up in the morning. Chapter 1743. Yi Xian was speechless. This girl believed what he had said before without a doubt. She wasn't mocking him, she really thought he had the ability to destroy the beastmen. Destroy the beastmen with one sword? This woman's way of thinking was dangerous. Damn it. Next time he had to know when to stop. Or else it would be awkward. He was a little awkward now. Soon the group left the Yi clan and headed for the Great Wall of Heaven Mountain. The Great Wall of Heaven Mountain was the last barrier against the beastmen. Once it was destroyed, the beastmen would invade the entire Yuan realm. That would be a disaster for the Yuan realm. Yi Xian realized that the Yuan realm didn't only have the 3 major powers, there were also many smaller powers. There were at least 100 million living beings in the Yuan realm. If the Great Wall of Heaven Mountain was destroyed, the fate of these living beings could be imagined. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly asked, Senior Yi Yuan, how did you meet my father? He was curious. He realized that his father had a wide circle of friends, completely different from Qing and his big brother. Yi Yuan smiled. We met in Sky Sun City. At that time one of his little white fellows took a fancy to one of my items and wanted to trade a stick of Tonghulu with me. Yi Xian laughed. Needless to say, it had to be Little White. Only Little White could do such a thing. Yi Yuan said, I saw that she was cute so I gave it to her. Hearing this, Yi Xian was surprised. The item she took a fancy to is not an ordinary item, yet you gave it to her just like that? Yi Yuan smiled. Actually, I had a selfish motive. Because she is the spirit ancestor, I wanted to form a good relationship with her. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, you didn't think of taking her away? Yi Yuan shook his head. How could I have such thoughts? The spirit ancestor had already recognized someone else as his master. How could someone who could be recognized by the spirit ancestor be an ordinary person? Especially since the other party dared to let the spirit ancestor wander around alone. Saying this, he shook his head and smiled. I don't need to think to know that the other party is not an ordinary person. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. This was the patriarch of a large clan. Who the hell was that Tianyi? Yi Yuan continued. However, she still didn't take my things for free. She still gave me a stick of Tonghulu. As he spoke, he smiled bitterly. Yi Xian also laughed. In Little White's heart, Tonghulu was really very precious. Actually, this was all the man in green's fault. This was because the green-robed man had told Little White that they could not casually take other people's things unless they used something precious to exchange for it. But he simply could not imagine that in Little White's heart, the most precious thing was the Tonghulu. Therefore in her world she felt that giving him candied fruits was already very very sincere. Meanwhile Yi Yuan continued, not long after she ran away your father brought her here. She insisted on returning it to me but I didn't accept it at that time. I just told her that I gave it to her. Take it as a good deed. Your father also agreed. Yi Xian understood. It turned out that Yi Yuan and his father had met because of Little White. However he had to admit that Yi Yuan was really bold. Because anything that Little White took a fancy to was definitely not ordinary, and he actually gave it away. Yi Yuan continued, young master, how are the sword master and the others? Yi Xian smiled, they are very good. My father is very free. In fact he was quite curious about where his father and big brother were going. Both of their strengths were very terrifying. If they were to work together they would definitely cause big trouble. He wanted to go with them but unfortunately his father did not bring him along. Sometimes he even wondered if he was really his biological son. Yi Yuan glanced at Yi Xian and smiled, young master, we're here. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and looked into the distance. Not far away he could vaguely see a huge city wall in the clouds. The Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain. Yi Yuan said softly, outside the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain is the Beastmen clan. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, an explosion suddenly came from the distant sky. Boom. In an instant the mountains shook and the earth trembled. Yi Xian frowned slightly. This is. Yi Yuan said in a low voice, Beastmen. Yi Xian blinked, so fierce. Yi Yuan nodded, those ascending heaven realm beastmen are even stronger. Beast demons of the mortal realm. As he said this, his expression became more and more serious. Not only Yi Yuan, but the expressions of the other Yi clan experts also turned solemn. Some of them had fought with the mortal realm beastmen of the Beast Demon clan and were very clear about the terror of the mortal realm beastmen of the Beast Demon clan. It was actually very difficult for beastmen to cultivate to the mortal realm because they could only rely on cultivating their physical bodies to break through to the mortal realm. But it was also because of this that once they reached the mortal realm, they would be very terrifying. It could be said that even two human mortal realm beastmen would find it difficult to stop a beast demon mortal realm beastmen. At this moment an old man suddenly appeared in front of everyone. On the left side of the old man's chest, there was a small Yuan character carved. Obviously this was from the Yuan clan. The old man looked at Yi Yuan who was in the lead. Where are your reinforcements? Yi Yuan turned to look at Yi Xian and the old man also looked at Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian he frowned slightly. It's him. Yi Yuan nodded. The old man looked coldly at Yi Xian. Yi Yuan, are you joking? Yi Yuan was a little displeased. Yuan Qi, what do you mean? Yuan Qi said coldly, this is the reinforcements you brought the entire clan to welcome? Are you trying to kill me? Yi Yuan's expression instantly darkened. Yuan Qi, why don't we spar first? Yuan Qi said calmly, Yi Yuan clan leader, how would I dare to spar with you? As he said this he looked at Yi Xian and laughed coldly. Bringing the entire clan to welcome a little kid, there's really something about your Yi clan. Yi Yuan clan leader, the person you called over is a joke. As he said this he turned and disappeared at the end of the horizon. Yi Yuan turned to look at Yi Xian. A trace of apology flashed in his eyes. Young master, I'm sorry. Yi Xian smiled. It's all right. Yi Yuan said solemnly. Young master, I've thought about it, you should go back. Yi Xian looked at Yi Yuan and Yi Yuan hurriedly said, I don't mean anything else, the main thing is, young master, you came to help this time, but our people treated you like this. I really feel bad because you have no obligation to help us. But you still came. But you received this kind of treatment. As he said this he sighed softly. Hearing this, Yi Xian had a good impression of Yi Yuan. No wonder this old man could form a good relationship with his old man. This kind of person, there was really nothing to say. At this moment he thought of Tianyi. What is this thing? Tianyi. Yi Yuan was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Senior Yi Yuan, I came this time because of you, not because of them, so just ignore them. Yi Yuan hesitated for a moment and then he said, Young master, my Yi clan and the Yuan clan have never been enemies. I'm afraid they will continue to target you later. Yi Xian smiled. Then can I kill them? Yi Yuan was stunned. Yi suddenly said, Of course you can. Yi Xian looked at Yi and smiled. Why? Yi said, There's no why. They target you for no reason, so of course you can kill them. Is there a problem? Yi Xian laughed. No problem. As he spoke he looked at Yi Yuan. Senior, let's go. I want to experience the beastmen as well. Yi Yuan thought for a moment and then he nodded, all right. No matter what, my Yi clan will stand behind young master. As he spoke, the group walked towards the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain. In a short while they arrived at the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain. It had to be said that the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain was really imposing. The city walls were built according to the mountains, and they were all made of some special materials that were even sturdier than the hardest dark steel. Of course, this was completely insufficient. Yi Xian discovered that there were all sorts of runes all over the city walls. On top of the city walls, there was a formation every few zhang. And Yi Xian also discovered that there were many powerful auras hidden in the mountains behind the city walls. There were really many mortal severing realm experts. He had somewhat underestimated the experts of the Yuan realm forces. Yi Xian looked into the distance. Thousands of meters away from the city walls, there was an endless mountain range. Between the mountains there were clouds and mist that couldn't be seen clearly. Yi Xian discovered that these clouds and mist weren't ordinary clouds and mist, because if they were ordinary clouds and mist, he would be able to see through them with his naked eye. However, these clouds and mist were like a barrier that forcefully blocked his vision. Yi Xian was just about to utilize his divine sense, but he quickly stopped himself. After all, they weren't ordinary demon beasts. If he utilized his divine sense right now, then they would definitely notice him. Yi Yuan suddenly said, "Young master, this is the area that our Yi clan guards. There are a total of 3 areas here. The Yuan clan is the strongest, so they're in charge of the most difficult area to guard, the main entrance. On the other hand, we and the Shao clan are in charge of the left and right." Yi Xian nodded slightly and then he looked towards the distance again. However, he was unable to sense anything. Suddenly, a group of people walked over from the city walls. There were around 13 of them. The person in the lead was a man in white armor. He seemed to be around the age of 20 and he was very handsome. However, his gaze was extremely cold, and it made others feel as if they couldn't approach him. Yi Yuan spoke softly, "It's the Yuan clan's Yuan Yen, the number 1 expert of the Yuan clan." Yi Xian gazed at Yuan Yen. Yuan Yen was at the void rank. As for the 12 people behind Yuan Yen, all of them were at the void rank as well. All of them were disciples of the Yuan clan and Shao clan. Yuan Yan's group walked over to Yi Yuan, and then they bowed slightly to him. "Patriarch Yi." Yi Yuan nodded slightly. "Are we going to patrol?" Yuan Yen nodded. "Are the members of the Yi clan ready?" Yi Yuan gazed at Yi He. Yi He nodded, and then she and some other members of the younger generation of the Yi clan stepped forward. Meanwhile, Yi He seemed to have thought of something and she gazed at Yi Xian. "Shall we?" FPW. Chapter 1744. Yuan Yen and the others immediately gazed at Yi Xian when they saw Yi He extend an invitation to Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Sure." Seeing Yi Xian agree, Yi He immediately smiled. On the other hand, Yi Yuan seemed to want to say something, but he was slightly hesitant. Yuan Yen glanced over. "Let's go." After saying that, the group walked towards the distant city wall. Yi Xian and Black Leaf followed. Yi Xian, Yi He and the other geniuses of the Yi clan were walking at the back of the group. Yi He pointed at Yuan Yen. "He's the most outstanding genius of the Yuan clan. I heard that he attained the peak of the void rank over 10 years ago, and there's even a rumor that he's already halfway into the Heaven Ascension realm." Yi Xian glanced at Yuan Yen. Yuan Yan's aura was thick and he was a void rank expert, just like a sword maniac. Although this person had not reached the Heaven Ascension realm, but he definitely had the strength to fight against a Heaven Ascension realm expert. Yi He then pointed at a black-robed man beside Yuan Yen. "This is Yuan Xiu, one of the geniuses of the Yuan family and one of the competitors for the Crown Prince. He's also a monster, but he's always been suppressed by Yuan Yen." Yi Xian looked at the man beside Yuan Xiu. The man looked thin and small and his face was a little pale. He said, "Yuan Qing. He's also a super genius, but he's been frail and sickly since he was young. Even though the Yuan clan used countless heavenly treasures, it was useless." She paused for a moment and continued, "He's quite extraordinary because he's at the void rank as well. Moreover, it requires extremely great willpower to cultivate to the void rank with that sort of body." Yi Xian asked, "Is he also competing for the position of heir?" Yuan Qing shook his head. He had no desires, and if it wasn't for the invasion of the beastmen, he wouldn't even appear in front of the world. He's a very low-key person. Low profile. Yi Xian glanced at Yuan Qing. At this moment Yuan Qing suddenly turned his head to look at him. Yi Xian smiled as a form of greeting. Yuan Qing also smiled faintly. At the side, a man in a luxurious robe suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. The man glanced at Yi Xian with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Then he nodded slightly in greeting. Beside Yi Xian, he said, "The person who greeted you just now is the most monstrous genius of the Shao clan's younger generation. His name is Shao Ju." Yi Xian looked at Yi He and smiled. "Yi clan is you, right?" Yi He nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian smiled and looked around. "What are we patrolling for?" Ji said, "There are frequent harassment and sneak attacks from the beasts. We are patrolling this area." As she spoke, she hesitated for a moment before she said, "Young Master Yi, don't attack rashly later." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Yi He said seriously, "Your sword is too powerful. I'm afraid you'll destroy our great wall of heavenly mountain." Yi Xian's expression froze. "It's over. Does this woman really think I can destroy a universe with a single strike of my sword? Damn it. I really can't brag like this next time." Right at this moment Yuan Yan suddenly stopped. At practically the same time Yi Xian frowned. Yi He turned around and glanced. "There's the aura of beasts." Yi Xian nodded. He just sensed an aura flash past the surroundings at an extremely swift speed. Yi He said in a low voice, "Be careful. There's a group of extremely mysterious assassins within the beasts. These beasts are extremely skilled in assassination techniques, and many of us die at their hands every time we battle them." Yi Xian smiled. "Looks like they've set their sights on us." Yi He nodded. She was about to speak when Yuan Yan suddenly vanished on the spot. Yi Xian immediately turned around. The space around 100 m away from the city had suddenly turned pitch black. In the next moment a man walked out. It was Yuan Yan, and in his hand he held a bloody demonic beast head. Yi Xian glanced at Yuan Yan. This person definitely had the strength to fight Heaven Ascension Realm. If he reached Heaven Ascension Realm, he would most likely be in existence that would be hard to find an opponent in the same realm. Beside him Yuan Xiao smiled slightly. "Big brother, you're very strong." Yuan Qing nodded slightly, not saying anything. Yuan Yan casually tossed the head aside and returned to the city wall. The group continued forward. However, Yi Xian turned around to take a look. He frowned. At this moment Yi He asked, "What's wrong?" Yi Xian retracted his gaze and smiled. "Be careful." Yi He said in a low voice, "There's another beast demon?" Yi Xian nodded. Yi He looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know where the other party is?" Yi Xian shook his head. "The other party is very strange. I can't pinpoint his exact location unless I use my sword." Yi He hurriedly shook her head. No. You can't use your sword. The power of your sword is too great, it will damage this place." Yi Xian. Yi He was about to speak, but at this time Yuan Yan stopped again. He turned his head and swept a glance, his brows slightly furrowed. Clearly he felt it too. Yuan Yan's right foot tapped lightly, and his entire person vanished into thin air. Rumble. Outside the city wall, a space suddenly exploded. The next moment a black figure retreated rapidly, but as he retreated he disappeared. At this time Yuan Yan also walked out of the shattered space. Yuan Yan's expression was calm. "Cowardly rat." Huh. At this time the space in front of Yuan Yan suddenly trembled, and then a man appeared in front of Yuan Yan. The man had a human body, but his face was extremely ugly. A beast demon. The beast demon looked at Yuan Yan and laughed heartily. "You're the number one genius of the Yuan realm, Yuan Yan?" Yuan Yan's face was expressionless. "What's with the nonsense? Come and fight." As his voice fell, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. In the distance the beast demon suddenly punched out. Bang. At the instant his fist smashed forward. The space in an area of over 30 kilometers seemed like it had been struck by a sledgehammer, and it trembled violently. Rumble. A white light suddenly exploded in front of the beastman. Immediately after, the beastman retreated explosively. This retreat was more than 1,000 feet away. He had just stopped when Yuan Yan suddenly appeared above his head. After which Yuan Yan suddenly stomped his foot down. Bang. When the foot landed, the space above the beastman's head collapsed, and the powerful force instantly blasted the beastman to the bottom of the city wall. Bang. A huge hole had suddenly appeared in front of the city wall, and the beast demon was nowhere to be seen. Yuan Yan took a glance at the hole, turned around and left. Yi spoke softly by Yi Xian's side. Yuan Yan seems to have grown stronger. Yi Xian didn't answer him. He just gazed towards the distance and saw a man walking over slowly from 3 kilometers behind Yuan Yan. The man wasn't much different from a human. He wasn't ugly and he had 2 long black horns on his head. Meanwhile, Yuan Yan stopped moving as well and then he turned around to gaze at the man. Meanwhile, the man suddenly vanished. Yuan Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he crossed his arms and pushed them forward. A head-on collision. Rumble. The others hadn't even recovered from their shock when the space around them split apart, and then 2 figures retreated repeatedly. It didn't take long for Yuan Yan to return to the city wall, and the man stopped after moving 300 m back as well. Once he stopped, he gazed at Yuan Yan and smiled. Again. Yuan Yan suddenly vanished on the spot. A ferocious expression flashed through the man's eyes, and then he smashed his fist forward. A head-on collision. The spectators felt like the sky was collapsing and their fields of vision dimmed down. Because the space outside the city wall had been obliterated at the instant the man punched forward. Bang! A black figure suddenly retreated explosively from within that pitch-black space. It was the beast demon. However, he hadn't retreated very far when the beast demon suddenly leaped up and slammed against the black figure. Rumble. The destroyed space collapsed once more, and Yuan Yan was blasted flying towards the city wall. The beast demon didn't attack again. He just gazed at Yuan Yan. Show yourself. Yuan Yan didn't hesitate to leap forward. However, the beast demon suddenly vanished on the spot at the instant he flew forward. The sound of space tearing resounded. A moment later, the beast demon had appeared in front of Yuan Yan, and he smashed his fist towards Yuan Yan's head. Yuan Yan suddenly pressed his palms together and formed a seal, and then a ray of black light suddenly swept out from within him. Rumble. The beast demon was blasted over 1 kilometer away. Meanwhile, Yuan Yan suddenly pressed his palm down towards the beast demon from afar. The space above the beast demon had suddenly split apart, and then a huge black palm descended. The beast demon suddenly raised his head, stomped his right foot against the ground and then shot up into the sky. He collided head-on once more. Rumble. The beast man collided with the enormous black palm, and the entire palm instantly exploded apart. Meanwhile, Yuan Yan suddenly appeared in front of the beast man. Yuan Yan didn't waste his breath at all and smashed his fist forward. This punch actually caused a strange sound to resound, and it was like the sound of chanting scriptures. Rumble. The spectators watched as the beast demon was blasted 3 kilometers away, and he just stopped when his chest split open and blood sprayed from it. At this moment, a black Buddhist seal was floating at the center of Yuan Yan's palm. Moreover, there was an ethereal image of a Buddha above Yuan Yan. After he blasted the beast demon back, Yuan Yan vanished on the spot. But a ray of white light suddenly flashed. Rumble. Yuan Yan returned to where he stood earlier. Yuan Yan turned around to look towards the right, and a woman was walking over slowly from over 1 kilometer away. She wore a tight black dress and her ink-black hair hung down to her hips. Moreover, she held 2 ghost stones in her right hand. One was black and the other white. She wasn't human as well. Because her ears were slightly larger than humans, but it didn't affect her appearance at all. She gazed at Yuan Yan and grinned. So it's the heir of the devil Daoist line from the Divine Temple. The devil Buddha from the Divine Temple? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Yuan Yan is from the Divine Temple? Next to Yi Xian, Yi He's expression was extremely solemn. The Divine Temple actually took a liking to him. Yi Xian turned to look at Yi He. Is the Divine Temple very powerful? Yi He looked at Yi Xian as if he was looking at a freak. Don't you know about the Divine Temple? Yi Xian smiled. I know a little about Daoist, but not much. Yi He stared at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I know you're very powerful and so is your father. However, I must remind you that you absolutely cannot offend the Divine Temple. Moreover, you absolutely cannot speak disrespectfully even when mentioning the Divine Temple. Otherwise you'll face imminent disaster. Remember this. Remember this. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Every time I read a book I always vote because it gives me a sense of satisfaction. Have you guys? PZW. Chapter 1745. Divine Temple. Hearing Yi He's words, Yi Xian knew that he might have underestimated Divine Temple. The Divine Temple Kong Mi that he met before, he was probably just an odd job worker in Divine Temple. He was even more curious about this Divine Temple. He suddenly patted Yi Xian's arm lightly. Are you listening to me? Yi Xian stopped thinking and said with a smile, I'm listening. Yi looked at Yi Xian. Don't provoke Divine Temple, especially the Devil Dao Yi faction, understand? Yi Xian was curious. There are factions in this Divine Temple? Yi nodded. There are two factions, one is the Devil Dao Yi faction, the other is the Saint Dao Yi faction. Yi Xian asked, what's the difference? Yi said, I heard that the Devil Dao Yi faction emphasizes on following one's heart, not suppressing one's heart. Hence they are people of character. And the Saint Dao Yi faction emphasizes on subduing one's heart, subduing oneself. Saying that, she shook her head. I don't know the specifics. However, whether it's the Saint Dao Yi faction or the Devil Dao Yi faction, they are both very, very scary. Even if it is this powerful beast demon clan, they will not easily provoke this temple. Yi Xian nodded. Actually, he was more curious about another faction. He remembered that Dad once said that other than the Divine Temple, there was another powerful faction. However, at that time Dad did not finish his words. This Dad too. Isn't your faction my faction? Anyway, what's yours will be mine sooner or later. To hide it, really. At this moment, the black-dressed beast demon lady walked in front of Yuan Yan. She looked at Yuan Yan, the corners of her mouth lifted. Come, let me experience the power of a devil faction disciple. Saying that, she waved her right hand. Boom. In an instant, the black-dressed beast demon lady and Yuan Yan appeared in an unknown starry sky. And this starry sky was actually a huge chessboard. Yuan Yan looked around for the first time. There was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. The beast demon lady suddenly pointed two fingers at Yuan Yan. Fall. Boom. In the depths of the distant starry sky, a ray of starlight fell straight down. Heaven and earth were the chessboard and the stars were the pieces. In the distance, Yuan Yan did not dare to be careless. He took a step forward, put his palms together and silently chanted. A giant black Buddha quietly formed behind him. With the appearance of this black Buddha statue, an extremely overbearing aura swept across the entire starry sky. At this moment, the entire starry sky shook violently as if there was an earthquake. Yuan Yan suddenly raised his head and roared, Buddha's fury exterminates all beings. As soon as he finished speaking, the black Buddha statue behind him suddenly raised its head and punched out. Boom. This punch directly blocked the starlight, causing the starry sky to tremble. However, the starlight did not disappear. Instead, both the Buddha statue and the starlight had become much dimmer. And at this time, the beast demon woman suddenly pointed at Yuan Yan again. Fall. Rumble. Another ray of starlight fell straight down from the starry sky. This time, this ray of starlight was actually burning. A powerful force swept down as if it wanted to crush the heavens and earth. It was incomparably shocking. Below, a trace of malevolence flashed through Yuan Yan's eyes. He suddenly stomped his right foot. Buddha's roar. As soon as he finished speaking, the black Buddha statue behind him suddenly raised its head and roared. A powerful force shot into the sky. Like lightning, the sound traveled thousands of miles, shaking the heavens and earth. Boom. The starlight above Yuan Yan's head shattered. The starlight shattered. Immediately after, the power soared into the sky and blasted the descending starlight. The starlight trembled violently and countless flames sputtered in all directions. In an instant, the entire starry sky turned into a sea of fire. At this moment, Yuan Yan suddenly looked at the beast demon lady and roared, Destroy. The Buddha statue behind him suddenly threw a punch at the beast demon lady. Rumble. A giant black fist tore through the sky, heading straight for the beast demon lady. The beast demon lady's expression was calm. She gently drew her fingers together and a white chess piece suddenly appeared in front of her. Boom. The white chess piece had actually blocked the black fist imprint. After a moment of silence, the beast demon lady opened her mouth. Destroy. The white chess piece suddenly shook violently and a powerful force erupted from it. In an instant, the black fist was destroyed. At the same time, the white chess piece transformed into a beam of white light that shot towards the distant Yuan Yan. In the distance, Yuan Yan's pupils constricted, and he suddenly pressed his palms together. Buddha wall. Behind him, the Buddha statue suddenly pressed its palms together, and a black barrier of light enveloped Yuan Yan. The white chess piece arrived. Rumble. The black barrier shook violently, but it wasn't damaged in the slightest. In the distance, the beast demon lady took a step forward and pointed forward. Starfall. As soon as she finished speaking, beams of starlight descended from the depths of the distant starry sky. In an instant the entire galaxy shook violently. When they saw this, the expressions of everyone on the Great Wall of Heaven mountain turned solemn. Xian's eyes were also filled with a trace of solemnity. Whether it was the Beast Demon Lady or Yuan, both of them were really strong. Especially the Beast Demon Lady's final move, Starfall. That could definitely destroy a minor world with ease. Xian looked at Yuan. If Yuan couldn't block that move, then he would be finished. That wasn't right. The Yuan family definitely wouldn't let their genius be killed here. Because he'd already sensed some extremely powerful auras in the surroundings. The powerhouses of the Yuan realm had been paying attention to this place. When Yuan saw countless beams of starlight descend from the starry sky, his expression turned extremely solemn. A moment later, a trace of ferocity flashed through his eyes. He took a step forward and pressed his palms together. The profound energy within his body surged like waves as he roared, "Immovable divine might." Behind him, the Buddha statue suddenly bent over and pressed its palms together to surround Yuan. At this moment, countless beams of starlight descended. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The beams of starlight slammed into the Buddha statue, and the entire starry sky began to crumble bit by bit. Because the starry sky could no longer withstand the power of the beams of starlight. As for Yuan and the Buddha statue, they'd been drowned by the beams of starlight. On the Great Wall of Sky Mountain, Yi spoke solemnly, "The experts of the Yuan realm still haven't made a move. Obviously they believe that Yuan can hold on." Yixian gazed at Yuan and didn't speak. Yi turned to look at Yixian. "If you were to face this woman, how many strikes would you need?" Yixian thought for a moment and said, "How many strikes do you think I should use?" Yi smiled and said, "One strike at most." Yixian was speechless. "She's already determined that I'm invincible and can easily instantly kill a mortal severing realm expert. My dear lady, why do you trust others so easily?" Right at this moment Yixian suddenly turned his head to look at Yuan Qingye, and Yuan Qingye was looking at him. Yuan Qing was slightly stunned when he saw Yixian look over, and then he smiled and looked away. Yi glanced at Yuan Qing who stood by Yixian's side. "Why is he looking at you?" Yixian smiled. "Perhaps he thinks I'm very handsome." Yi's face froze. Meanwhile, the starry sky of the battlefield had been completely obliterated, and Yuan had appeared before them. He's still alive. At this moment, the Buddha statue behind Yuan was extremely illusory and almost translucent. Moreover, his countenance was extremely pale and devoid of blood. He'd forcefully resisted Starfall. The beast demon woman who stood before Yuan grinned. "As expected of the heir of the Divine Temple's Devil Dao bloodline. You really do have some ability." Yuan wiped off a trace of blood from the corner of his mouth and said, "You're from the book hall." The beast demon woman smiled. "Yes." Yuan's face fell when he heard this. The book hall. Actually, most people didn't even know about the book hall and the Divine Temple because they very rarely appeared in the world. An extraordinary power. The book hall was an extraordinary power that wasn't inferior to the Divine Temple. He hadn't expected that the book hall would actually recruit beast demons from the beast demon race. The beast demon woman smiled. "Let's continue." As she spoke, she was about to attack again. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from afar. "Xian, let's go." Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and saw a woman standing over 1 kilometer away. She wore a white robe and held a folding fan in her hand. She seemed like a woman disguised as a man. However, what was surprising was that this woman looked exactly the same as a human. There was nothing different about her. The beast demon woman called Xian, didn't attack again when she heard this. Her figure shook as she appeared in front of the woman. "Big sister Yumu, he's from the Divine Temple." The woman glanced at Yuan. "He isn't the only one in the Divine Temple." Xian was stunned and then she said, "There's someone else?" The woman nodded. Xian hurriedly asked, "Who is it?" The woman smiled. "Why are you so curious?" Xian took the woman's hand and acted like a spoiled child. "Big sister Yumu, you just like to keep me in suspense." Yumu smiled. "We're going to get busy. Let's go." As soon as she finished speaking, she took Xian's hand and turned around to leave. However, she'd only taken a few steps when she stopped and turned around to look at Yixian. Yixian was stunned when he saw Yumu look at him. "Why is she looking at me?" Yu Mu gazed at Yi Xian for a short while, and then she smiled before she turned around and left. Xianxia glanced at Yi Xian as well, and then she asked, "Big sister Yu Mu, is that human a disciple of the divine temple?" Yu Mu shook her head. Xianxia was slightly puzzled. "Then why are you looking at him?" Yu Mu smiled. "He isn't that weak." Xianxia couldn't help but glance at Yi Xian. "He doesn't seem like a good person at first glance." Yu Mu was speechless. It didn't take long for them to vanish into the distant mountains. Next to Yi Xian, Yi looked at Yi Xian again. "Why did she look at you just now?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said, "Perhaps she took a liking to me." As he spoke he sighed softly, "I've already kept a very low profile. However, an outstanding person is like a towering tree in a forest. No matter how you keep a low profile and hide, you'll still be noticed. Because you're too outstanding. Just like me." He gazed at Yi Xian with a dumbstruck expression. PZW. Chapter 1746. Needless to say, Yi was slightly stunned. She didn't know what to say. It was the first time she'd seen a man like Yi Xian. Was he shameless? Not really. Because she felt that he was really formidable. But this fellow was a little narcissistic. Because that mysterious woman definitely didn't look at him because she liked him. Meanwhile, an old man appeared in front of Yuan Yen. The old man sized Yuan Yen up and asked, "How do you feel?" Yuan Yen shook his head. "I'm fine." The old man nodded slightly. "Let's go back and rest for a while." Yuan Yen spoke solemnly. "That woman is from the book hall." The book hall. The old man's expression gradually became solemn and a trace of worry flashed through his eyes. "I wonder if the beastman's attack this time is related to those transcendental powers." Yuan Yen fell silent, but his expression grew uglier. If those transcendental powers were fighting, then they would be the unlucky ones. After all, when those above fought, those below would be the unlucky ones. Meanwhile, the old man spoke abruptly. "The beastmen retreated after their attack and there's still no movement until now. I'm afraid something big is about to happen. The patriarch has already gathered all the patriarchs for a discussion. Come and listen." Yuan Yen nodded. The old man said, "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished with Yuan Yen on the spot. He spoke abruptly from nearby. "Grandfather wants us to go to the Origin Hall to discuss something important. Let's go listen." Yi Xian smiled. "Should I go as well?" He nodded and smiled. "Let's go listen. Let's understand the current situation." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "All right." Meanwhile, Xiaoju suddenly walked over and he looked at Yi and smiled. "Miss Yi." Yi nodded slightly. "Young Master Xiao, what's the matter?" Xiaoju smiled and then he looked at Yi Xian. "May I know how I should address you, brother?" Yi Xian smiled. "Yi Xian." Xiaoju cupped his fists. "I'm Xiaoju. Brother Yi, you look unfamiliar. Is this your first time here?" Yi Xian nodded. "It is indeed the first time." Xiaoju smiled and said, "If Brother Yi is free, you can come to the Xiao family as a guest." Yi Xian smiled and said, "All right." Xiaoju nodded. "Brother Yi, talk to you later." As soon as he finished speaking, he cupped his fists, and then he led the disciples of the Xiao clan away. Beside Yi Xian, Yi smiled and said, "He wants to befriend you." Yi Xian glanced at Xiaoju and said with a smile, "Let's go." With that, he and Yi turned around and left. On the other side, Yuan Xiu glanced at Yi Xian and Yi who were leaving and said with a smile, "Little brother Qing, what do you think of him?" Yuan Qing said softly, "Very strong. Very strong." Yuan Xiu smiled and said, "He is indeed very strong. I just don't know to what extent." Yuan Qing looked at Yuan Xiu and smiled. "Won't we know after we fight?" Yuan Xiu laughed and said, "That's not good. It's truly rash of me to challenge him when he just arrived in the primordial realm. Moreover, we have an even stronger enemy now." Yuan Qing nodded. Meanwhile, Yuan Xiu suddenly smiled and said, "Actually, I want to fight you the most." Yuan Qing looked at Yuan Xiu and was slightly curious. "Fight me for what?" Yuan Xiu looked at Yuan Qing and said with a smile, "My intuition tells me that you're even stronger than Big Brother." Yuan Qing shook his head. "I'm not very interested in fighting." Yuan Xiu blinked. "Are you really not the slightest bit interested in the position of heir?" Yuan Qing smiled lightly and said, "Would you believe me if I said I'm not interested?" Yuan Xiu laughed and said, "I don't care if you're interested or not. In any case, I'm interested." Yunqing smiled lightly. Then second brother, you have to work hard. Because big brother is practically the heir now. Yuan Xiu smiled and said, I'll work hard. Yuan Qing hesitated for a moment and said, Big brother isn't bad and so are you. Don't fight each other for that position. That's meaningless. Yuan Xiu laughed and said, Don't worry. I want to fight for that position, but I'll use proper methods. I disdain and wouldn't dare to use such despicable methods. Those old fellows in the clan aren't blind. Even if I want to play dirty, they won't allow it. Yuan Qing nodded and said, No matter which one of you becomes the heir, I'll be convinced. Yuan Xiu smiled and said, Then what do you dream of, third brother? Yuan Qing hesitated for a moment and then said, Life is free. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Life is free. Yuan Xiu's expression gradually became serious. Life is free. Is that simple? No. It's not simple at all. What kind of strength does one have to reach in order to live free? Yuan Xiu shook his head and smiled, then turned around and left. Under Yi He's lead, Yi Xian arrived at a large hall. At this moment there were already some people in the hall, and Yi Xian noticed that besides a few young people, the rest were basically Transcendence Realm experts. One had to admit that the great powers of the Yuan realm were extremely powerful. When he saw Yi Xian, Yi Yuan immediately looked at Yi Xian, smiled slightly and nodded in greeting. Yi Xian also smiled, then followed Yi He to a seat near the back. The younger generation of the few great clans were all very far back. Beside Yi Xian, Yi He looked at the middle-aged man in the seat of honor in the distance. He's called Yuan Qiu, the current patriarch of the Yuan family, and he's at the peak of the Transcendence realm. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Qiu. This person's aura was completely absent, as if he didn't exist. The feeling this person gave him was just like the ancestor of the Tian clan, unfathomable. Yi He said again, Not far from him is the patriarch of the Shao family, Shao Lin. He's also one of the super elites of the Yuan realm. Yi Xian looked at Shao Lin. Like Yuan Qiu, he couldn't feel any aura from him. This kind of elite was already independent of the world. At this moment Yuan Qiu suddenly said, Everyone's almost here, so let's begin. As he spoke, he looked at Shao Lin. Brother Shao, you've been to the Beast Demon Mountain range before. Tell us what you think. Shao Lin was silent for a moment, then said, The Beast Demon clan may be even stronger than we expected. Yuan Qiu nodded slightly. Speak. Shao Lin said in a low voice, I was stopped by the patriarch of the Beast clan before I could even enter. This person's strength is at the peak of the Transcendence realm, and not only that, his physical body should have reached the Transcendence realm. Moreover, it's at the peak. Transcendence realm. Hearing this, the expressions of everyone in the hall were very ugly. If it was just a Transcendence realm elite, it actually wasn't much because there were many Transcendence realm elites in the Yuan realm. But if it was a Transcendence realm elite with a Transcendence realm body, then it wouldn't be simple. Such a Transcendence realm elite with a Transcendence realm body was too difficult to kill. Not to mention a single Transcendence realm expert. Even 3 Transcendence realm experts would find it slightly difficult to kill such a demon beast with a Transcendence realm body. Shao Lin continued, As for that person that unified the Beast Demon clan, I haven't seen him. But since he was able to subdue a peak Transcendence realm expert, then his strength is at least above the Transcendence realm or even stronger. The expressions of everyone here grew even more unsightly when they heard this. An expert that was above the Transcendence realm. Actually, everyone in the hall was very clearly aware that how could a person that was able to unite the beast race and demon race be an ordinary person? He was absolutely not an ordinary person. But that person still hadn't shown himself until now. The unknown was even more terrifying. Meanwhile, Yuan Qi suddenly gazed at Yi Xian and said with a smile, Didn't the Yi clan ask for reinforcements earlier? Where are they? Yi Xian glanced at Yuan Qi. Damn it. This old fellow intends to cause trouble. When they heard Yuan Qi, everyone looked at Yi Yuan. Yi Yuan spoke indifferently, Yuan Qi, are you trying to cause trouble? Yuan Qi spoke coldly, Patriarch Yi Yuan, I'm not trying to cause trouble. It's just that all of you said you wanted to ask for reinforcements, so I'm quite curious. Yi Yuan was about to speak when Yuan Qiu suddenly gazed at Yi Xian. Brother Yi Yuan, did you ask for this young friend? Everyone looked at Yi Xian when they heard Yuan Qiu. At this instant, Yi Xian had become the center of attention. Yi Xian smiled and then he walked forward. It's me. Yuan Qi gazed at Yi Xian with undisguised ridicule in his eyes. Have you come to eat for free? Yuan Qi. Meanwhile, Yi Yuan suddenly slapped his palm forward. Yuan Qi's expression instantly changed drastically, and he raised his arm to block it. Bang! In front of everyone's eyes, Yuan Qi was blasted away. No one in the hall had expected that Yi Yuan would suddenly attack. For a time all of them were slightly stunned. Yi Yuan gazed coldly at Yuan Qi, who stood outside the hall. Yuan Qi, you can disrespect my Yi clan, but you can't disrespect the young master of my Yi clan. If it happens again, then the old man will definitely stop at nothing to kill you. Yuan Qiu immediately frowned when he heard this, and the expressions of the other Yuan clan experts turned cold as well. Yuan Qiu gazed at Yi Yuan with a calm expression. Brother Yi, you're going too far. Yi Yuan laughed coldly. Going too far? Yuan Qiu, do you think my Yi clan is easy to bully? Since it's like that. As he spoke, he waved his hand. Give the order for all the members of the Yi clan to leave immediately. The Yi clan isn't going to play with all of you anymore. Who cares if you're from the Beastman clan or not? Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and left. On the other hand, the other experts of the Yi clan were stunned for a moment before they stood up and hurriedly followed after him. When he witnessed this scene, Shaolin hurriedly stopped Yi Yuan. Brother Yi, wait a moment. Brother Yi, this is only a misunderstanding. There's no need to do this. Yi Yuan spoke coldly. Brother Shao, you know my character. Even though I, Yi Yuan, am a kind person, I'm not a pushover that anyone can bully. His Yuan clan has caused trouble in the past and they're going to cause trouble again now. Since his Yuan clan is so formidable, then let them resist the Beastman clan. What use does my Shao clan have? As soon as he finished speaking, he intended to leave, but he was forcefully stopped by Shaolin. He naturally couldn't allow Yi Yuan to leave just like that. If the Yi clan withdrew at this moment, then they wouldn't be able to do anything. That was like annihilation. After he stopped Yi Yuan, Shaolin gazed at Yuan Qiu. Brother Yuan, that Yuan Qi from your Yuan clan really went too far this time. No matter what, he doesn't have the qualifications to speak to Brother Yi Yuan like that. Make him apologize. Apologize. Why? Right at this moment, Yuan Qi, who just walked in from afar, spoke in a ferocious voice. Why should the old man apologize to him? When has my Yuan clan ever feared the Yi clan? There was a reason why he dared to act so arrogantly. Besides the fact that the Yuan clan was stronger than the Yi clan, there was another reason, and it was because the Yuan clan had the Divine Temple backing them. Yuan Yan was the heir of the Divine Temple's Devil Dao Yi bloodline. With such a relationship, who would the Yuan clan have to fear? Shaolin glanced at Yuan Qi and his gaze gradually turned icy cold. Meanwhile, Yuan Qiu spoke abruptly. Apologize to Brother Yi. Yuan Qi looked at Yuan Qiu with a face full of astonishment. Yuan Qiu added, apologize. This time his tone was slightly heavier. Yuan Qi's face fell. He knew that his patriarch was angry. Yuan Qi fell silent for a moment before he gazed at Yi Yuan. Patriarchy, I was rash just now. I'm sorry. Yi Yuan grunted coldly and then he walked over to Yi Xian and was slightly apologetic. Young master, I'm sorry for dragging you into such a mess. Alas. Yi Xian hurriedly said, since they don't welcome me, then why don't I leave? Yi Yuan's expression froze when he heard this. This young master seems like he wants to flee. Yuan Qi suddenly laughed coldly and ridiculed. You're afraid. Yi Xian frowned slightly and he gazed at Yuan Qi. Geezer, is there something wrong with you? There's no enmity between us, yet you've targeted me time and time again. Are you looking for trouble? Yuan Qi was instantly enraged. How dare you insult me? You. Yi Xian laughed coldly. Insult you? Don't you think you're a retard? Let me ask you, what benefits do you get from targeting me like this? Do you? No, right? Since you don't, then why are you working so hard to target me? I can only think that you've eaten too much shit. Yuan Qi stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Do you think you can do whatever you want with the Yi clan protecting you? Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at Yi Yuan. Senior, why don't we go join the Beastmen clan? We won't take this. Everyone. Shaolin looked at Yi Xian in shock. Damn, what kind of tricks does this guy have? He's going to betray us at the slightest disagreement? Yi Yuan was also somewhat confused. He couldn't keep up with this young master's train of thought. The expressions of the Yuan clan's experts became somewhat ugly. If Yi Yuan really brought the Yi clan to join the Beastmen clan, then they wouldn't be able to do anything. It could be said that if they wanted to defend the Yuan rank, None of the three forces could do without one. At this time Yuan Qiu suddenly said, "You want to join the enemy?" Yi Xian looked at Yuan Qiu and smiled. "Yuan family head, let me ask you a question first. As far as I know, I have no enmity with the Yuan clan, so why do your people keep targeting me time and time again?" Yuan Qiu was silent. Actually, he didn't know as well. Because it was just as Yi Xian had said, Yi Xian had no enmity with the Yuan clan. It wasn't just the Yuan clan, even Yuan Qi had no reason to target Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Could it be that he's a spy sent by the Beastmen clan, and he's causing trouble on purpose to cause internal strife?" When he spoke up to this point, he feigned surprise as he looked at Yuan Qi. "No wonder you keep targeting me. So that's why. So that's why." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Xiao Lin and the other experts of the Xiao clan immediately looked at Yuan Qi with hostile gazes. Yuan Qiu looked at Yuan Qi as well and he frowned. Yuan Qi was speechless. P.S. An online literature branch is being established in Guizhou Junyi today. I'm going to join in the fun and meet the big shots of online literature in Guizhou. I'm a little nervous because there are too many big shots. I'm going to take a picture with a few big shots today. Do any of you have any big shots that you like? I can ask for autographs for all of you. Leave a message in the book review section and tell me. Chapter 1747. Yuan Qi's expression was extremely ugly as he stared at Yi Xian. "You're trying to slander me." Yi Xian shook his head. "No. Since you think I'm slandering you, can you tell me why you're targeting me?" Yuan Qi's expression became even uglier. Why was he targeting Yi Xian? Actually, he just wanted to ridicule the Yi clan and embarrass them. However, he could not say that. If he said it now, not just the Yi clan, even the Xiao clan would be angry. And he himself would definitely become the target of everyone because of this matter. At this moment Yi Xian spoke again. "I only know the Yi clan here. You wouldn't be targeting me because of the Yi clan, right?" Yuan Qi looked at Yi Xian and did not say a word. The faces of the experts from the Yi clan darkened. Yi Xian smiled. "Since it's not the Yi clan and I have no grudges with you, then there's only one explanation. You might have received benefits from the Beastmen clan and deliberately came to cause trouble." "Bullshit." Yuan Qi roared. "You're trying to slander me." Yi Xian shrugged and retreated to the side, not saying a word. Yuan Qi still wanted to say something, but Yuan Qiu suddenly said, "Shut up." Yuan Qi looked at Yuan Qiu with an ugly expression. "He's slandering me, Yuan Qiu looked at Yuan Qi coldly. "Shameful thing." Hearing this, Yuan Qi was shocked and did not dare to say another word. At this moment Yuan Qing suddenly smiled. "This should be a misunderstanding." Hearing this, everyone in the hall looked at Yuan Qing. Yuan Qing looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Previously we heard that the Yi clan's senior went to get reinforcements, so we were all very curious about this reinforcements. When we found out that the reinforcements were Brother Yi." As he spoke he grinned. "I believe that it isn't just Elder Yuan Qi who's curious, even everyone present here should be curious. Of course, I don't mean to look down on Brother Yi, but Brother Yi is just too young. That's why Elder Yuan Qi said that, but I believe he's just curious about young Master Ye's strength and has no other ill intentions." Hearing Yuan Qing's words, Yuan Qiu's eyes flashed with a trace of admiration. Xiao Lin glanced at Yuan Qing as well and he exclaimed with admiration in his heart. "This young man isn't simple." In a few words he changed the topic to Yi Xian. Because as Yuan Qing had said, Yuan Qi was not the only one who was curious about Yi Xian's strength. After all, the entire Yi clan had gone to welcome him. Not only were the experts of the Xiao clan and the Yuan clan curious, even the experts of the Yi clan were curious. Because apart from Yi, none of them knew what Yi Xian's combat prowess was, let alone where he came from. However, because of Yi Yuan, even if they had doubts in their hearts, they wouldn't ask him directly. Yi Xian glanced at Yuan Qing and said with a smile, "Actually, I think it's a misunderstanding as well. Because I don't think an elder of the Yuan clan would be so stupid." Yuan Qi's expression instantly became ferocious when he heard this, and he was just about to speak when Yuan Qiu suddenly looked at him and said, "Don't speak again." Yuan Qi. Some of the Yuan clan experts in the surroundings glanced at Yuan Qi with slight displeasure. This fellow's intelligence has already been crushed by Yi Xian, so he might suffer a loss if he continues to speak. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Since it was a misunderstanding, then I will forgive Yuan Qi and the Yuan clan. You guys can continue talking." Yuan Qi, the experts of the Yuan clan were also dumbfounded. What do you mean by forgiving us? The more he listened, the more it sounded wrong. Yuan Qing smiled. Brother Yi, you should have reached the Heaven Ascension boundary, right? Heaven Ascension boundary. Everyone in the hall looked at Yi Xian when they heard this. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to discern it, but the people here weren't ordinary. Especially Yuan Qiu and the others. They discerned Yi Xian's boundary. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said with astonishment, Brother Yuan Qing, you haven't reached the Heaven Ascension boundary? Yuan Qing looked at Yi Xian. Not yet. Yi Xian frowned slightly. How is that possible? Isn't it very simple to reach the Heaven Ascension boundary in one's 20s? Everyone was stunned. Reaching the Heaven Ascension boundary was very simple. It actually wasn't difficult to reach the Heaven Ascension boundary, but it was extraordinarily difficult to reach the Heaven Ascension boundary in one's 20s. In any case, no one had ever reached the Heaven Ascension boundary at this age in the history of the Yuan realm. Yi Xian said, Brother Yuan Qing, did you conceal your boundary? Otherwise, how could you still be at the void rank? Yuan Qing gazed at Yi Xian. I didn't conceal my boundary. I really am only at the void rank. Yi Xian blinked. Isn't it very simple to reach the Heaven Ascension realm? Why haven't you reached the Heaven Ascension realm? Yuan Qing was speechless. The experts of the Yuan clan glanced at Yi Xian with slightly hostile expressions. Damn it. Is this something a human should be talking about? It wasn't just the members of the Shao clan. Even the younger generation had unsightly expressions on their faces. Meanwhile, Yuan Xiu suddenly smiled and said, Brother Yi, since you were able to reach the Heaven Ascension realm at such a young age, I presume your combat strength is extraordinary. I'd like to seek guidance from Brother Yi. Challenge. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yuan Xiu was an extraordinary genius of the Yuan clan. Even though he hadn't reached the Heaven Ascension realm, he possessed the combat strength of a Heaven Ascension realm expert. Perhaps it was quite difficult for an ordinary person to surmount their realm of cultivation to do battle. But a genius of such a clan couldn't be called a monstrous genius if he couldn't surmount his realm of cultivation to do so. Yi Xian smiled. You want to challenge me? Yuan Xiu smiled. A friendly spar. Yi Xian fell silent. Yuan Xiu blinked. Brother Yi is at the Heaven Ascension realm while I'm only at the void rank. Brother Yi wouldn't refuse, right? Everyone in the hall gazed at Yi Xian when they heard this. Yi Xian was at the Heaven Ascension realm while Yuan Xiu was only at the void rank. If Yi Xian refused, then not to mention the experts of the Shao clan and Yuan clan, even the members of the Yi clan would do the same. After all, they were challenging the strong as the weak. Yi Xian smiled. I think it's meaningless to just spar like this. Why don't we make a bet? A bet. Yuan Xiu gazed at Yi Xian. I wonder what Brother Yi wants to bet? Yi Xian smiled. How about this? We'll use a saint rank spring of eternal life as the bet. A saint rank spring of eternal life. The expressions of the members of the Yuan clan changed when they heard this. There were a total of 12 saint rank springs of eternal life in the Yuan rank, and the 3 clans each used 4. It could be said that the saint rank spring of eternal life was the core lifeline of a clan. A saint-level spring of eternal life was extremely precious. No one had expected Yi Xian to make such a big bet. Even Yi Yuan hadn't expected this. Yuan Xiu smiled. Does Brother Yi have a spring of eternal life? Yi Xian turned to look at Yi Yuan, and Yi Yuan immediately said, If young master loses, my Yi clan is willing to give the Yuan clan a spirit rank spring of eternal life. The expressions of the experts of the Yi clan changed when they heard this. That was the lifeline of the Yi clan. If Yi Xian lost, then the Yi clan would lose a spirit rank spring of eternal life. That was no joke. One of the elders hesitated for a moment before he said, Patriarch, this matter carries great implications. Should we discuss it with the other elders? Yi Yuan glanced at that elder. There's no need for that. That elder intended to say something else, but Yi Yuan suddenly spoke indifferently. Elder Gu, I've made my decision. Don't say anything else. That elder laughed bitterly and didn't say anything else. If he said anything now, then it would be equivalent to openly questioning Yi Yuan's authority, and it would be disadvantageous to the entire Yi clan. Especially when there were outsiders here. No matter what internal conflict there was, it couldn't be exposed in front of outsiders. Yi Xian smiled and then he gazed at Yuan Xiu. What about the Yuan clan? Yuan Xiu fell silent for a moment and then he turned to look at Yuan Qiu. Yuan Xiu gazed at Yuan Xiu. Are you confident? Yuan Xiu shook his head. I'm not 100% confident. He wasn't blindly confident because he knew nothing about Yi Xian. Of course he wasn't a coward. Yuan Xiu's face instantly fell when he heard Yuan Xiu, and he was slightly hesitant. After all, it was a spirit-rank spring of eternal life. It wasn't a joke. Meanwhile, Yuan Yen hesitated to speak. He wanted to say that he should do it, but if he did, then it would undoubtedly be like he was questioning Yuan Xiu. For a time the entire Yuan clan was in a dilemma. Meanwhile, Yuan Qi suddenly spoke in a low voice. Yi Xian, you're at the Heaven Ascension realm while Yuan Xiu is only at the Void rank. Do you think this is fair? Yi Xian immediately cursed. Fuck you. It's not fair, yet you're asking him to challenge me? Have you really eaten too much shit? Don't you understand the situation? If you don't, then allow me to remind you that it's one of you who is challenging me, not me. Yuan Qi stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You're insulting me. Yi Xian laughed coldly. I don't want to talk to a retard like you. As he spoke, he gazed at Yuan Xiu. Are we going to fight or not? If we fight, then we can begin right now. If we don't, then we can disperse. Yuan Xiu turned around to gaze at Yuan Xiu. Patriarch, I'm willing to pay with my life if I lose. Yuan Xiu gazed at Yuan Xiu for a short while before he said, all right. He had no choice but to agree. If he didn't, then it would be utterly humiliating for the Yuan clan. Moreover, if he didn't agree, then it would be equivalent to rejecting Yuan Xiu, and it would be equivalent to killing a genius of the Yuan clan. The expressions of the experts of the Yi clan instantly fell when they saw the Yuan clan's carelessness. Even though Yi Xian's cultivation was slightly higher, Yuan Xiu wasn't an ordinary person. He was an existence who could surmount his realm of cultivation to kill someone. If Yi Xian lost, then the Yi clan would lose a spirit-rank spring of eternal life, and it was a loss that the Yi clan couldn't afford. But at this moment they had no other choice but to believe Yi Xian. Yuan Xiu smiled. Brother Yi, shall we go somewhere else? Yi Xian smiled and said, sure. Moments later the group arrived at a valley in a mountain range. Yuan Xiu glanced at Yi Xian and Yuan Xiu and said, the space here has been reinforced by us. The two of you can fight at will. As he spoke, he directly appeared on top of a mountain several thousand feet away. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Xiu. Can we begin? Yuan Xiu smiled and said, we can begin. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. Make the first move. In an instant, the space above Yi Xian's head was torn apart. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed, and then he put it away and left. Boom. Everyone watched as Yuan Xiu's entire body was sent flying. He flew for a distance of 100,000 feet. When he stopped, only his soul remained. Not only that, but the surrounding mountains began to be annihilated bit by bit, and the reinforced space also began to disappear at this moment. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. Chapter 1748. The single attack. He'd ended the battle with a single attack. At this moment, everyone in the surroundings had been petrified. None of them had expected this to happen. Even though Yuan Xiu was only at the Void rank, he possessed the strength to kill Heaven Ascension Realm experts. Yet now, he hadn't even been able to resist a single attack from Yi Xian. Everyone here was gazing at Yi Xian as if they were looking at a monster. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly stopped moving, and then he turned around to gaze at Yuan Xiu. Patriarch Yuan, don't forget about your saint-rank spring of eternal life. Yuan Xiu gazed at Yi Xian in silence. At this moment he was shocked as well. He was very clearly aware of Yuan Xiu's strength, but he hadn't imagined that Yuan Xiu hadn't even been able to resist a single attack from Yi Xian. How terrifying was this young swordsman? Yuan Xiu was quite stunned as well. Actually, he hadn't utilized his full strength when he attacked just now because he wanted to probe Yi Xian's strength. However, he hadn't imagined that Yi Xian would actually defeat him with a single attack. He was stunned as well, because he didn't know if it was Yi Xian's strongest attack or if it was a casual attack from Yi Xian. As if he'd thought of something, Yuan Xiu turned around to gaze at Yuan Xiu and laughed bitterly. Patriarch, I've lost. As he spoke, his soul started to burn. He'd paid with his life. He was very clearly aware of how important a saint-rank spring of eternal life was to the Yuan clan. Not to mention one life, even 10 lives wouldn't be enough to pay for it. Yuan Yen suddenly appeared in front of Yuan Xiu when he saw him burn his soul, and then he slapped Yuan Xiu on the shoulder. Bang! Yuan Xiu's soul instantly returned to normal. Yuan Yan gazed at Yuan Xiu. Victory and defeat are common, so why pay so much attention to it? Yuan Xiu shook his head and laughed bitterly. The saint-rank spring of eternal life. Yuan Yan stared at Yuan Xiu. You're more valuable than it. Not to mention a single spring of eternal life. Even 10 springs of eternal life can't compare to you. Yuan Xiu was stunned when he heard this. Meanwhile, Yuan Xiu spoke abruptly. Yuan Yan is right. Even 10 springs of eternal life can't compare to you. As for victory or defeat, the Yuan family can afford to win, but we can also afford to lose. Furthermore, it's not a bad thing for you to lose today. Do you understand what I mean? Yuan Xiu nodded. I understand. Losing wasn't a bad thing. At this moment he was like a cup filled with water that was suddenly emptied. All the confidence and arrogance he had in the past had vanished into thin air at this moment. And that was not a bad thing. The current Yuan Xiu was akin to being reborn. An expert with a strong heart was not afraid of failure. The more he failed, the stronger he would become. Suddenly Yuan Yan gazed at Yi Xian. Brother Yi. Yi Xian stopped and turned to Yuan Yan with a smile. Are you dissatisfied? Yuan Yan looked at Yi Xian. I submit. The Yuan family can afford to lose. However, I want to challenge Brother Yi again. Yi Xian laughed. 2 springs of eternal life. 2 springs of immortality. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. This fellow doesn't even want to let go of the remaining 2 springs of eternal life of the Yuan family. As for Yuan Qiu and the others, their faces instantly fell. Yuan Yan hadn't expected that Yi Xian would actually go so far. Why is he so confident? Yuan Yan was about to speak when Yuan Qing suddenly smiled and said, Why don't you allow me to play with Brother Yi? All of them gazed at Yuan Qing. Yuan Qing gazed at Yi Xian and grinned. Let's bet on 2 springs of eternal life. Yi Xian grinned. All right. Yuan Qing smiled and then he turned around and walked over to Yuan Qiu. He suddenly grabbed Yuan Qiu's right arm and didn't say anything. However, Yuan Qiu's pupils constricted while a trace of disbelief appeared in his eyes, but it quickly vanished. A moment later, Yuan Qiu turned around and gazed at Yi Xian. The Yuan family is willing to bet. Willing to bet. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the members of the Yi clan fell. Yuan Qing gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi, that sword technique from before was extraordinary indeed. I'd like to experience it. Yi Xian roared with laughter, and then he turned around to gaze at Yi Yuan, who was slightly worried. Don't worry, Senior Yi Yuan, I won't lose. Yi Yuan smiled. I believe in the young master. Yi Xian gazed at Yuan Qing and smiled. Bring it on. Yuan Qing nodded slightly and then he slowly clenched his right fist. In an instant the heavens and the earth here instantly became illusory. On the other hand, Yi Xian held the sword in his hand while his eyes were filled with battle intent. Actually, he really wanted to fight right now. He really wanted to fight. However, he didn't want to fight a Heaven Ascension Realm expert because he'd been able to instantly ascend to the Heaven Ascension Realm earlier. He wanted to fight a Mortal Severing Realm expert. A Mortal Severing Realm expert that had no weaknesses. He didn't feel any pressure when facing an ordinary Mortal Severing Realm expert, and it was only interesting to fight a Mortal Severing Realm expert that had no weaknesses. However, he didn't underestimate this Yuan Qing who stood before him. Since Yuan Qing still dared to challenge him after witnessing that strike of his and even went so far, Yuan Qing's strength was absolutely not weak. Of course, he wouldn't fear Yuan Qing. When had he, Yi Xian, been afraid of anyone in the younger generation? He'd just have to fight. Yi Xian suddenly roared with laughter, and then he walked towards Yuan Qing with his sword in hand. In an instant, an extremely terrifying sword aura swept through the surroundings. Bang! In an instant, the space in the surroundings started to surge like boiling water. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed when they witnessed this scene. What a formidable sword aura! Moreover, Yi Xian's sword aura contained a strand of something else. Deciding life and death with a single strike. The core of Qing'er's deciding life and death with a single strike was actually a type of aura. Once I strike, I'll definitely kill you. Murderous aura. This was the unique aura of Qing'er's deciding life and death with a single strike, and it was murderous aura. At this moment, there was only a single thought in Yi Xian's mind as he gazed at Yuan Qing, and that was to kill him with a single strike. Just one strike. It couldn't be any more. The more confident Yi Xian was, the stronger the sword aura became. At this moment, Many Heaven Ascension stage experts in the surroundings were unable to endure this sword aura, and they retreated explosively. Even some mortal severing stage experts found it slightly difficult to endure. However, this sword aura was still growing stronger and stronger. At this moment, Yuan Qiu's face had completely darkened. In the distance, Yuan Qing was like a small boat surrounded by a violent storm in the ocean, because Yi Xian's murderous aura was targeted at him. At this moment, Yuan Qing's face didn't have the carefree expression from before, and his eyes were filled with seriousness. At this moment, Yi Xian's footsteps suddenly sped up. In an instant, the sword aura suddenly surged back into his body, and the sword in his hand suddenly trembled violently. A sword cry shot into the sky and into the clouds. Just as Yi Xian was about to strike, an afterimage suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The person who had attacked was none other than the Shao clan's patriarch, Shao Ju. Shao Ju said with a smile, "Little friend, can today's competition be delayed?" Yi Xian laughed heartily, "Sure, but my sword can't be delayed." As his voice fell, he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. One sword to decide life and death. It was a simple one sword to decide life and death, and there was no sword drawing technique added. The instant this sword was struck, Shao Ju's face instantly changed. He couldn't dodge in time and could only face it head-on. He directly blasted out a punch. Rumble. A flash of sword light suddenly erupted in front of the two of them, and in an instant Shao Ju was sent flying. He flew for a distance of 1,000 feet, and the moment he stopped, his entire right arm disappeared. Not only that, his entire body also became illusory in an instant. His body was about to shatter. Seeing this scene, everyone present was greatly shocked. This was Shaolin, one of the 3 super experts of the primordial realm. Yuan Qiu's eyes were also filled with disbelief. The might of Yi Xian's sword had greatly exceeded his expectations. It wasn't just Yuan Qiu, Yi Yuan and the others at the side were also extremely shocked at this moment. That sword strike from Yi Xian earlier was truly too terrifying. This was a sword strike from a 20-year-old youth? The most shocked was still Shaolin in the distance. His body didn't disappear because he'd forcefully preserved it with a secret technique, but he'd also suffered a heavy injury. That sword strike from before had almost destroyed his soul. Although his consciousness could survive, if his soul was destroyed, it would be extremely harmful to him. The reason he came out to stop Yi Xian was mainly for the sake of the overall situation. In this battle, regardless of whether Yi Xian or Yuan Qing won, the primordial realm was finished. Why was everyone united now? It was because they were resisting the Beastmen clan. But why were they resisting the Beastmen clan? It was because they were guarding the spring of eternal life. No matter if the Yuan clan or the Yi clan lost, then this alliance would collapse. Without the spring of eternal life, what was the point of guarding it? Moreover, even if they lost, the other party might not really hand over the spring of eternal life. At that time, everyone would have a conflict and they would still be finished. Therefore, he had no choice but to stop Yi Xian. However, he really didn't expect that the might of Yi Xian's sword strike would actually be so powerful that it almost killed him. This was too terrifying. At this moment, Yi Xian blinked. "Senior, are you all right?" Shaolin glanced at Yi Xian. "Little friend, I've underestimated you." Underestimated. Everyone present was looking at Yi Xian. Not only Shaolin, but they'd also underestimated Yi Xian. No, there was one person who hadn't underestimated him. That was Yi He. Yi He had believed in Yi Xian from the beginning. She wasn't worried for Yi Xian at all. Instead, she hoped that Yi Xian wouldn't use his full strength. She was afraid that Yi Xian's full strength would directly destroy the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain. Fortunately, Yi Xian hadn't used his full strength. As if thinking of something, Yi He suddenly looked at Yi Xian and asked, "Young Master Yi, how much strength did you use just now?" Yi Xian said with a smile, 50%. 50%. Everyone was petrified when they heard this. Shaolin looked at Yi Xian with an extremely interesting expression. 50%. This fellow only used 50% of his strength just now? Would I still be alive if I used all my strength? Shaolin was shocked. However, he still felt a lingering fear. Yi Xian sheathed his sword, turned around and left. Right at this moment, Yuan Qing, who hadn't been born yet, spoke abruptly. "Brother Yi, what was that sword technique called?" Yi Xian stopped and turned around to look at Yuan Qing, and he smiled. "One sword to decide life and death." One sword to decide life and death. Yuan Qing spoke softly. What a great one sword to decide life and death. There's actually such a terrifying sword technique. Yi Xian smiled. I created it myself. It's not bad, right? Created it himself. Yuan Qing's expression froze. Meanwhile, Xiao Ta, who resided within Yi Xian's body, couldn't help but ask, Young master, isn't that sword technique big sister Tianming's? Yi Xian said in his heart, Isn't Qing'er's technique mine? Is there any difference between what she created and what I created? Is there? Xiao Ta fell silent for a moment before he said, Young master, if you're going to be so shameless, then I have nothing to say. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. I was too tired from yesterday's meeting. Sorry. Chapter 1749. Speechless. Xiao Ta was indeed speechless. This young master was simply too shameless. How could he say such things? A person who was shameless was truly invincible. At this moment, Yuan Qing, who was opposite Yi Xian, suddenly said, Brother Yi, did you really create this sword technique? Obviously, he was still doubtful of Yi Xian's words. Yi Xian smiled. Brother Yuan, you don't believe me? Yuan Qing nodded honestly. Yi Xian laughed. Brother Yuan Qing, I created that move when I was fighting against Brother Yuan Xiu just now. Yuan Qing, Xiao Ta couldn't help but ask, Young master, the sword drawing technique is master's, right? Yi Xian's face darkened. Xiao Ta, the sword drawing technique is dad's. Then let me ask you, are dad's things going to be passed down to me in the future? Xiao Ta blurted out. Then it will only be yours after master is dead. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta said in a low voice. Young master, can you pretend you didn't hear what I said just now? Yi Xian chuckled, not saying a word. Xiao Ta hurriedly said, It's all created by you. You created the sword determining life and death. The sword drawing technique is also created by you. Young master, you are the most awesome. Yi Xian. At this moment, Yuan Qing suddenly spoke softly from afar. Brother Yi is truly an extraordinary genius. Yi Xian laughed. I think so too. Yuan Qing was speechless. You are really not humble. Yi Xian didn't continue to talk about the duel. If he continued and Yuan Qing lost, the Yuan clan would definitely fall out with him, which would be very disadvantageous to the Yi clan. After all, the Yi clan's overall strength was not as good as the Yuan clan's, and they had the Beast clan as their enemy. Hence this ending was good for everyone. Moreover, Yuan Qing was a good person. There was no need to make him a mortal enemy. Yuan Qiu and the others heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts when they saw that Yi Xian didn't mention the matter of a one-on-one battle. This was equivalent to giving the Yuan clan a way out. Not only the Yuan clan but the Yi clan also heaved a sigh of relief. If this continued, then they really wouldn't be able to clean up the mess. What happened now was the best outcome. Yi Xian walked up to Yi Yuan and said with a smile, Senior Yi Yuan, I want to find a quiet place to go into seclusion. Yi Yuan hurriedly said, Young lord, follow me. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Yuan left with Yi Xian, and He hurriedly followed after them. The experts of the Yi clan also followed. At this moment, when these experts of the Yi clan looked at Yi Xian, their eyes were filled with respect. They had respected Yi Xian before, but that was only because of Yi Yuan. But now their respect was because of Yi Xian's strength. It didn't take long for the experts of the Yi clan to leave. Yuan Qiu fell silent for a moment before he said, Yuan Qi, you're not allowed to speak in public from this moment onward. Otherwise I'll kill you. Yuan Qi's expression was quite unsightly. Yuan Qiu gazed at Yuan Qi with killing intent in his eyes. Did you hear me? Yuan Qi was shocked in his heart and he hurriedly nodded. I did. Yuan Qiu glanced coldly at Yuan Qi. He really wanted to kill Yuan Qi. It was exactly because of Yuan Qi that the Yuan clan had lost a saint-rank spring of eternal life. His heart was bleeding. He'd never thought of going back on his word because if he did, then the Yuan clan would be looked down upon by everyone. However, a spring of eternal life. Yuan Qiu couldn't help but glance at Yuan Qi when he thought up to here. He really wanted to kill Yuan Qi. Why target Yuan Qi for no reason? Yuan Qi hurriedly lowered his head and didn't dare speak. He knew that he was in trouble when Yi Xian defeated Yuan Xiu. I offended someone I shouldn't have. I'm bloody unlucky. Meanwhile, Yuan Qiu suddenly gazed at Yuan Qing. Were you able to resist that attack from before? Yuan Qing nodded. 60%. Yuan Qiu smiled. That's enough. If Yuan Qing had a 60% chance of taking on Yi Xian's attack, it meant that he could fight Yi Xian. Yuan Qing continued. But if he used his full strength, then I wouldn't be able to resist it. 50%. Yuan Qiu frowned. Did that fellow really only use 50% of his strength? He was slightly doubtful, but Yi Xian was a super swordsman at any rate. Swordsmen like him usually disdained to show off and lie. Meanwhile, Yuan Yen spoke abruptly. He's not simple, especially that sword technique of his. If he really created it, then it's too terrifying. Yuan Qing nodded as well. If he really created it, then he really is an extraordinary genius. That sword technique. As he spoke, a trace of fear flashed through his eyes. The strength of that sword technique was unprecedented. Yuan Qiu smiled. Actually, it's not a bad thing. Today the three of you were able to see a genius from outside the Yuan realm. I believe that all of you will have gained a lot of comprehension. Yuan Qing nodded. There's always someone better out there. Yuan Yen nodded as well. Don't underestimate anyone. Yuan Qiu roared with laughter. At this moment he suddenly felt that even though they'd lost a spirit-grade spring of eternal life, the Yuan clan didn't have to worry about prosperity with these three brothers around. The gloominess on the faces of the other Yuan clan experts was swept away as well. The most important thing for a large clan wasn't just its foundation, but its younger generation as well. Because the younger generation was related to the clan's future. As for the Yuan clan's younger generation, they weren't just strong, they were united. Shaolin suddenly sighed softly. Actually, he was quite envious of the Yuan clan. The geniuses of the Yuan clan's younger generation were truly united. Even if they competed, it was a fair competition. Moreover, Yuan Yan's character was good, and he was able to convince everyone. Unlike the Shao clan, even though Shao Ju was the leader of the Shao clan's younger generation, the Shao clan's younger generation wasn't that harmonious. Moreover, Shao Ju's methods were too ruthless. Meanwhile, Yuan Qiu looked at Shaolin and cupped his fists. Thank you, Brother Shao, for helping us out today. Shaolin withdrew his thoughts and shook his head with a smile. It's what I should do. Our top priority is to deal with the Beastmen clan. It's better to avoid misunderstandings like this. Yuan Qiu smiled. It won't happen again. Shaolin nodded. Old man, go back and recuperate. Farewell. With that, he left with the experts of the Shao clan. As for Yuan Qiu, he left with everyone. Not long after everyone left, a phantom suddenly appeared in the field, and the phantom said softly, a self-created sword technique. There's actually such a monstrous genius among the humans. As he spoke, he gradually vanished. The battle at the canyon made Yi Xian famous in a single battle. Now Yi Xian could be said to be the most famous person in the entire Yuan realm. His fame was even above the geniuses of the Yuan clan. He defeated Yuan Xiu with one strike, heavily injured Shaolin with another. And Yi Xian was only in his 20s. In the entire Yuan realm, countless people were getting more and more curious about Yi Xian. Beastmen Mountain Range. A woman sat under an ancient tree, and in her right hand was an ancient human scroll. The woman was reading it with great interest. The woman was Yumu. At this moment, a phantom suddenly appeared in front of Yumu, and the phantom said a few words. Yumu nodded. Got it. The phantom left silently. At this moment, Xian appeared beside Yumu. Xian said in a deep voice, I found out about Yi Xian's background. He's the young master of the All Heavens City. All Heavens City. Yumu narrowed his eyes. The All Heavens City with the Sword Alliance? Xian nodded. Not long ago the Ancient Heaven clan of the Ancient Heaven realm offended this fellow. This fellow brought the All Heavens City to the Ancient Heaven realm and destroyed the Ancient Heaven realm. This person's background isn't simple. Yumu smiled. How is he not simple? Xian said in a deep voice. His father. In other words, the green-clothed sword master. This person is rather mysterious and I can't find out his background. After a moment of silence, Yumu said softly, continue the investigation. Xian nodded, and as if she thought of something she said, I heard that Yi Xian is very lecherous. Lecherous. Yumu looked at Xian and smiled. You want to use a honey trap? Xian laughed. My man wants to be invincible in the world. If that Yi Xian can defeat Yumu, I don't mind being his woman. But that's impossible, isn't it? Yumu shook his head and smiled. Don't look down on others. Xian giggled. I'm not looking down on him, but Yumu, you're too strong. Yumu handed the ancient book in his hand to Xian. Look at this. Xian asked. This is. Yumu smiled. I asked for the heavenly crippling chess manual from the book hall for you. Hearing this, Xianxia was stunned. In the next moment she hugged Yumu and kissed him, saying excitedly, "All right Yumu, I love you to death." Yumu shook his head and smiled. "I've seen it. It's not bad and it's very suitable for you now. Go and cultivate." Xianxia nodded. "Okay." Saying this, she put the book away and turned to leave. Under the tree, Yumu leaned against the tree behind her and slowly closed her eyes. One sword to decide life and death. What a domineering name. To be able to create such a sword technique. I really want to meet him and have a spar with him. Obviously, she didn't believe that it was created by Yi Xian. Yi Yuan brought Yi Xian to a small valley. Yi Yuan smiled. "Young master, this is where I usually cultivate. The surrounding space is reinforced by a formation, so it's very quiet." Yi Xian looked around and said with a smile, "Thank you." Yi Yuan shook his head and smiled. "Young master, you're too polite. Young master, take your time cultivating. I'll take my leave first." Saying this, he looked at Yi He. "Let's go." Yi He blinked and said, "Grandfather, I'll have a chat with young master Yi. You go first." Yi Yuan glared at Yi He. "What are you talking about? Don't move and disturb young master you." Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "I'll have a chat with Miss Yi He." Yi He giggled. "Grandfather, hurry up and leave." Yi Yuan was a little helpless. He didn't disturb the two of them and turned to leave. However, before he left, a smile appeared on his face. His granddaughter seemed to have a good relationship with the young master. This was great news. He. After Yi Yuan left, Yi He hurriedly walked to Yi Xian. "You can kill the beast demon mountain range, right?" Yi Xian hesitated, then nodded. Yi He hurriedly asked, "When did you kill them?" Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "Depends on my mood." Xiaota suddenly couldn't help but say, "Young master, are you sure you can?" Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. "Damn, I know I can't. But this girl thinks I can." Since he had already acted tough, he couldn't possibly take it back. Since he couldn't take back his act, he would continue acting. Chapter 1750. Actually, Yi Xian really wanted to explain that he really couldn't destroy the universe with one sword. He wasn't Qing. But now this lady firmly believed that he could. This made him very speechless. Yi suddenly said, "According to what I know, there is a very powerful person in the Beast Demon clan. He is the one who unified the Beast Demon clan. If you meet him, you must be careful." Yi Xian nodded. "I will." Yi smiled. "Then you practice, I won't disturb you anymore." Yi Xian smiled. "All right." Yi left. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young lord, master has a mysterious force which is even stronger than temple. Do you know what it is?" Yi Xian asked. "You know?" Small Tower snickered. "Of course." Yi Xian quickly asked, "What force is it?" Xiaota smiled. "Guess." Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. Damn it, this Xiaota will sell him out sooner or later. Ignoring Xiaota, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Hong. In an instant, a powerful sword force swept out from his body. Previously, when he fought with Yuan Qing, he had some enlightenment. One sword to determine life and death. He realized that previously he didn't fully understand this sword skill created by Qing. What is one sword to determine life and death? This sword will determine your life and death. Understanding it this way is not wrong. But this is determining your life and death, not self-indulgence. After all, you can't do whatever you want. Force. This sword skill's force is the core. Not sword force but killing force. He had always misunderstood one point. He thought that Qing-er's sword skill was particular about sword force. She was not. Qing-er's force is killing force. This sword skill is used to kill. Not only this sword skill to Qing-er, the sword is also used to kill. Therefore this sword technique was to kill. The stronger the killing aura, the more powerful the life and death sword would be. Could also be said to be killing intent and killing intent. Previously, when facing Yuan Qing, his killing intent was unprecedentedly strong, and it was precisely because of this that his one sword determines life and death suddenly became so terrifying. It was just a power, but it made some Heaven Ascension experts not dare to face it directly. Yi Xian realized that if this sword technique was paired with the crazed demon bloodline, it might be even stronger. Thinking of this, Yi Xian directly activated the crazed demon bloodline. Boom. In an instant, Yi Xian was covered in blood. Yi Xian took a step forward and a powerful murderous aura swept out from the sword in his hand. Rumble. In the surroundings, the reinforced space began to crumble bit by bit. Yi Xian gripped the sword in his hand tightly. The murderous aura around him grew stronger and stronger, and the surrounding space was rapidly being destroyed. At this time, Yi Yuan suddenly appeared on the scene. He hurriedly said, "Young lord." In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at Yi Yuan, his eyes bloodshot. Being stared at by Yi Xian like this, Yi Yuan's heart trembled. What a powerful murderous aura and killing intent. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly returned to normal. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes, and a moment later he looked at the sword in his hand, his expression incomparably solemn. He found a problem. That was when he used Qing Heirs. One sword determines life and death. As long as he added killing intent, his killing intent would increase crazily, just like the crazed demon bloodline that had lost its mind. At this moment he suddenly felt that Qing Heir might not have been a good person in the past. This sword technique was meant to kill. And the greater the killing intent, the greater the power. Yi Xian could not help but ask, "Xiao Ta, what kind of person was Qing Heir in the past?" Xiao Ta was silent. Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Why aren't you saying anything?" Xiao Ta said, "I don't dare to say bad things about Sister Tianming." Yi Xian smiled. "Just saying, as long as I'm here, Qing Heir won't blame you." Xiao Ta sighed softly. "Sister Tianming? Young master, I can only say that Sister Tianming is a bit anti-human. No, she's a bit anti-universe. The feeling she gives me is that she views human life as worthless. Of course, except for you. Except for you, she has never been nice to master. Moreover, master doesn't really want to provoke her, or should I say, she's the only person master doesn't want to provoke." Yi Xian said with a smile. "Why?" Xiao Ta smiled bitterly, "Because once she gets serious she might even destroy the universe." "Yi Xian," Xiao Ta said again, "anyway, after so long, I only realize that when she's facing you she's like a woman, but when she's not facing you she's like an emotionless god. No, she's scarier than a god. Scarier than a god." Yi Xian smiled. All of a sudden he kind of missed Qing. He didn't know where she was now. Once the matter in the Yuan realm was over, he decided to find Qing Heir. At this time Yi Yuan suddenly said softly, "Young master." Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked at Yi Yuan. "I'm sorry, I made too much of a commotion just now." Yi Yuan smiled bitterly. "I underestimated young master's strength. Young master, I'll bring you to another place." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Okay." Yi Yuan brought Yi Xian to a deathly silent star region. Yi Xian looked around. The star region was deathly silent. There was no sign of life. Yi Yuan said with a smile, "Young master, you can cultivate here. It doesn't matter how much of a commotion you make." Yi Xian said with a smile, "That's exactly what I wanted." Yi Yuan cupped his fists. "Then take your time to cultivate, young master. Call me if you need anything." With that he turned and disappeared. In the entire deathly silent star region, only Yi Xian was left. Yi Xian looked around, then took a step forward. In an instant the crazy demon bloodline in his body surged again. Yi Xian's lips curled into a sinister smile. He stabbed out with his sword. Where the tip of the sword fell, a blood-red sword light suddenly condensed. Boom! In an instant the entire deathly silent star region boiled, and then it was annihilated bit by bit. Everything was being annihilated. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Just like that he felt the surrounding stars being annihilated. This feeling, he had to admit, was wonderful. With one sword nothing could survive. At that moment he suddenly had a new discovery. He discovered that Qing Er's one sword determines life and death, was not limited to one person's life and death. Her one sword determines life and death was broader. She could determine the life and death of an entire world, an entire universe. At that moment he discovered that Qing Er was just like this vast universe, so powerful that there was no end to her strength. For the first time he felt Qing Er's strength and terror. This was the first time. He knew that Qing Er was strong, but he did not have that kind of concept. Now he deeply felt Qing Er's terror. Qing Er's sword Dao's scope was greater than this universe. Thinking of this, Yi Xian could not help but smile bitterly. If he wanted to surpass Qing Er, he didn't know how long it would take. Of course he would not be discouraged. In any case, the stronger Qing Er was, the happier he was. They were siblings. If Qing Er was strong, wouldn't that mean that Yi Xian was strong? Thinking of this, Yi Xian could not help but laugh. His mentality was quite good. In the following time, Yi Xian continued to study the one sword determines life and death. At this moment his one sword determines life and death had undergone a qualitative change. Even without the addition of the sword drawing technique, his one sword determines life and death could easily kill a Heaven Ascension Realm expert. Even if an ordinary mortal Severing Realm expert were to withstand it, they would definitely be severely injured. And if he added the sword drawing technique, then his one sword determines life and death would become even more terrifying. Its power was at least twice as strong as before. In addition, if he used the power of his bloodline, then the power of the one sword determines life and death would become even stronger. The power of his bloodline was far too great for this one sword determines life and death. In the Yi clan hall. At this time the Yi clan and the other experts were all present, and they all had bright smiles on their faces. Because just now the Yuan clan had delivered a Saint Tier Spring of Eternal Life. And now the Yi clan had a total of 4 Saint Tier Springs of Eternal Life. This was equivalent to a windfall from the sky. At this moment Yi Yuan suddenly said, "I want to give this Spring of Eternal Life to the young master." Hearing this, all the experts of the Yi clan were dumbfounded. Give the Spring of Eternal Life? At this time an elder said in a deep voice, "Patriarch, this is the Spring of Eternal Life." Yi Yuan smiled and said, "I know." As he spoke he swept his gaze across the crowd. "Everyone, this Spring of Eternal Life was won by the Yi clan with our own strength?" Inside the hall everyone was silent. Yi Yuan said again, "This was fought for by the young master. Of course I know that everyone is reluctant, but do you really think that it is a good thing for the Yi clan to have another Saint Tier Spring of Eternal Life?" Everyone looked at Yi Yuan and Yi Yuan shook his head. "It is not a good thing. First, although the Yuan clan has handed over a Saint Tier Spring of Eternal Life, there are many people in their clan who are not satisfied. Right now, because of the existence of the Beastmen clan, they have not made any moves. But once the war is over, do you think the Yuan clan will let it go? Not only that, the Yi clan may become a special target of the Beastmen clan." As he spoke he drank a cup of tea and said softly, "This is a hot potato. Since it is a hot potato, why not give it to the young master in exchange for a better karma?" In the hall everyone was still silent. Reluctant. This was a Saint Tier Spring of Eternal Life, how could they be willing to give it up? Yi Yuan smiled and said, "Everyone, are you still reluctant?" At this time an elder suddenly said, "I think it is worth it to give it to the young master." Everyone looked at the elder and the elder said in a deep voice, "The young master is not an ordinary person. If we can use a Saint Tier Spring of Eternal Life to exchange for a better karma, it is not a bad thing for the Yi clan." The elders were still hesitant. At this time Yi Yuan suddenly smiled and said, "Yi, what do you think of the young master?" Yi blinked. "Very good. He is not arrogant at all, I quite like this person." All the spectators were stunned when they heard this. Yi Yuan laughed heartily. His laughter was very loud. In the hall, everyone looked at each other. Yi Yuan looked at everyone and smiled ambiguously. "Everyone, do you understand?" At this moment an elder suddenly said, "Yes." The rest of the people nodded in agreement. In next to no time, everyone expressed that it was worth it. Very worth it. Only Yi was dumbfounded. Chapter 1751. In the dead silence of the starry sky, Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the air with his hands on his knees. His eyes were slightly closed and he was like an old monk in meditation. Enlightenment. During this period of time he had many insights while cultivating one sword to determine life and death. The breakthrough of one sword to determine life and death seemed to have opened a new world for him. Not only that, but he was also digesting God Ye's sword principles and ideas. He had to admit that God Ye was indeed not simple. Even now he had the strength to instantly kill Heaven Ascension Realm, but he still felt that God Ye was not simple. One should know that the martial arts civilization of God Ye's immortal world was far behind the Yuan realm and All Heaven's city. Yet God Ye could cultivate to the Heaven Ascension Realm in that place. He was not an ordinary monster. Not only that, he found that God Ye had his own ideas about the mortal severing realm. After a while Yi Xian sighed softly. If God Ye had not met such excellent parents like Yi Lingtian and Tian Yi, he would probably be a character with a protagonist halo. Especially Tian Yi. Tian Yi did not care about God Ye at all. As for Yi Lingtian, he was actually very puzzled. Yi Lingtian was not an ordinary person, but a true proud daughter of heaven. How could such a person like Tianyi take a fancy to an idiot like him? Who the hell was Tianyi? Tianyi was speechless. In the starry sky, Yi Xian was quietly comprehending. Not only was he comprehending his one sword to determine life and death and sword drawing technique, but he was also studying the mortal severing realm. What was the mortal severing realm? The greatest difference between the mortal severing realm and the heaven ascension realm was actually the use of the dimension of time. The heaven ascension realm could cultivate a dimension of time that belonged to them, while the mortal severing realm could materialize this dimension of time that was cultivated. Space-time. Yi Xian found that from his cultivation until now, he found that no matter how he cultivated, he could not leave space and time. It used to be space, but now it was time. What was above time? It was consciousness. However, he found that even consciousness needed to be entrusted with time. In that case, what was above time? After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, Xiao Ta, what do you think is more awesome than time? Xiao Ta said, a lot. Yi Xian quickly asked, what? Xiao Ta said, thick skin. Yi Xian frowned. What thick skin? Xiao Ta said, thick skin, shameless people are invincible in the world. Of course. Young master, I'm not talking about you. Don't think too much. Really, I swear on master's character that I'm really not talking about you. Don't hold a grudge. Yi Xian's face darkened. Damn it. He really wanted to sell Xiao Ta at a low price. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly said indifferently, Xiao Ta, how dare you speak ill of Qing? I'll tell Qing'er when the time comes. Faster, thief. Xiao Ta immediately jumped up. Young master, when did I speak ill of Sister Tianming? Don't make things up. Yi Xian laughed mischievously. Do you think Qing'er believes you or me? Xiao Ta jumped up. Young master, this is not a joke. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Yi Xian shrugged his shoulders. It's not that I can't say whatever I want occasionally. Xiao Ta hurriedly begged. Young master, big brother, I won't speak ill of you anymore. Also, don't speak ill of me, okay? Let me go. I'm just a Ta. Other than being a little mischievous occasionally, I have no other flaws. I'll definitely turn over a new leaf. I promise. Yi Xian blinked. Xiao Ta, being such a coward isn't your style. Don't be afraid of Qing. Qing'er hits you, hit her. I believe you can do it. Xiao Ta fell to the ground. He leaned against the corner of the wall and hung his head dejectedly. Hit my head. She can turn me into ashes with just one look. Arya is so awesome, but in front of her she's also as obedient as a little girl. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta said again, Young master, didn't you just say that there's something more powerful than time? Yi Xian asked, you know? Xiao Ta laughed. I don't know. However, I often follow master. I know some of the things that master said. He once said something about time. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, what did dad say? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, space, limitless eternity. Time, limitless eternity. Hearing that, Yi Xian frowned slightly. Limitless eternity? Limitless eternity? Xiao Ta nodded. Yes. He said something like that. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what does that mean? Xiao Ta said, young master, you're making things difficult for me. I'm just a pagoda. Why would I study this? Yi Xian smiled and said, then what do you study every day? Or Xiao Ta, do you have any dreams? Xiao Ta smiled and didn't speak. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Xiao Ta, why do you smile so wretchedly? Xiao Ta immediately said angrily, is my smile wretched? Yi Xian nodded. I think it's quite wretched. Xiao Ta snorted coldly. Young master, let me tell you. Although I'm just a Xiao Ta, I also have dreams. Yi Xian smiled and said, what dreams do you have? Xiao Ta thought for a while and then said, I want to be the first pagoda in the universe. Yi Xian blinked. If you follow dad, won't you be the first pagoda in the universe? Xiao Ta shook his head. Oh no. I want to rely on myself to become the first pagoda in the universe. Do you know why I don't follow master? Because I want to rely on myself. I'm not like some people who rely on dad or sister. I want to rely on myself. Oh, young master, I'm not talking about you. Really, I'm really not talking about you. Don't take it personally. Yi Xian said seriously, Xiao Ta, I really admire you for having such a great ambition. How about, you go train by yourself? Xiao Ta hurriedly shook his head. Oh no. I want to follow you. Yi Xian asked, why? Xiao Ta subconsciously said, it's safer to follow you. Yi Xian's expression froze. Safe. What the heck? Don't you want to train? Xiao Ta said again. Of course Xiao Ta will never call anyone. Even if I die Xiao Ta will die with integrity. You want me to call someone? That's definitely not possible. Yi Xian smiled and said, Xiao Ta, don't worry. Next time if there's a strong enemy I won't call anyone. I'll self-destruct with you. You'll be the tower with integrity and I'll be the person with integrity. What do you think? Xiao Ta hesitated for a while then said, Young master, if you really meet someone you can't defeat you can call someone. Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. Next time I won't call anyone even if I die. If I can't defeat them we'll self-destruct. Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, Young master. It's not shameful to call someone. You can call someone. Yi Xian shook his head again. I won't call anyone even if I die. I'll self-destruct with you. Xiao Ta was a little confused. Even if you don't call anyone you can just self-destruct. Why do you have to self-destruct with me? Am I innocent? Yi Xian said seriously, We'll share blessings and difficulties together. Xiao Ta hesitated for a while then said, Young master, you don't have to be so stubborn. If we really can't defeat them we can still run. Fighting to the death is the behavior of a reckless man. As the saying goes, as long as there's life, there's hope. Yi Xian said, No, I'll self-destruct with you. Xiao Ta suddenly couldn't help but scold angrily. Do you have a lump in your head? Yi Xian said, I'm going to tell Qing that you scolded her. Xiao Ta was silent for a moment then said, Young master, you're really inhuman. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta said again, although master is shameless there's still a limit. When you're shameless you're practically like a god. You didn't learn much from Master Sword Dao, but not only did you learn the essence of his thick skin, you even surpassed him. Young master, if you continue to be so thick-skinned, I feel that even Sister Tianming Master and Brother Xiaoyao together won't be able to break your skin. I even suspect that you feel that your Sword Dao can't surpass them, so you want to use the unconventional Sword Dao to surpass them? Yi Xian. On this day early in the morning the sky was slightly bright, and a red sun slowly rose from the horizon. Suddenly, the Beast Demon Mountain range trembled and countless beast demons surged out from the Beast Demon Mountain range, pouncing towards the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain like a tide. On top of the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain, a roar suddenly sounded, The beast demons are attacking, activate the array. As the voice fell, the array on the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain suddenly activated, and in an instant the entire Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain was covered by countless arrays. On the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain, the experts of the three clans all had extremely serious expressions. As far as the eye could see there were beast demons everywhere. The beast demons were like a tide. At this moment the ground under the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain suddenly split open, and the next moment, a huge beast demon suddenly flew out. The beast demon's body was like a mountain, and its arms were like pillars. With a roar, it directly leaped onto the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain. Boom! The entire Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain shook violently, but the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain did not collapse because it was supported by the array. The beast demon was about to hit it again, but at this moment, the roar of a beast suddenly sounded from the Beast Demon Mountain range in the distance, and the next moment all the beast demons stopped. All the beast demons stopped in place. At this moment, the group of beast demons suddenly split into two sides, and in the distance a middle-aged man slowly walked out. Beast King. Among the beast demons, countless beastmen roared in unison. The Beast King walked to the bottom of the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain, and he looked up at Yuan Qiu who was on the Great Wall of Heavenly Mountain. Come and fight. Fight. Very directly. In the field, countless beast demons roared in unison. Fight. 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 The sound was like thunder shaking the clouds. A public challenge. Yuan Qiu naturally could not back down. If he did, the morale of the Yuan realm would hit rock bottom. Yuan Qiu took a step forward and directly came in front of the Beast King. Please enlighten me. The Beast King laughed heartily. As you wish. As his voice fell, the two of them directly disappeared. Boom. The space in front of the two of them suddenly turned into a long time-dimensional river, and the two of them were in it. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared outside the Great Wall of Heaven Mountain. The person who came was Xian. Xian looked at Yuan Yan on the city wall. Let's fight again. Yuan Yan naturally would not refuse and he directly leaped out. Xianxia opened her palm and a chess piece slowly floated up from her hand. The next moment she and Yuan Yen appeared in a vast galaxy once again. The galaxy was resplendent. Yuan Yen slowly put his palms together and behind him, an illusory Buddha quietly condensed. But this time the Buddha statue was actually blood red in color. Blood Buddha. P.S. I've been catching up on books recently. Damn that bastard, one update a day is fine. But he always asks for leave without updating. Is this something a human should do? Moreover, the other party also likes to keep us in suspense, often cutting off chapters at the most exciting moments. Damn, this kind of behavior is really inhumane. Why don't you finish updating in one go when it's exciting? Is it fun to keep us in suspense? Is it fun to cut off chapters? You finish updating in one go making us feel good. Can't we vote for you? You purposely keep us in suspense, and even if it's exciting I won't vote. Although I'm also an author, I really despise such people. For the sake of votes they do things that are inhumane. They don't care about martial ethics. Chapter 1752. In the starry sky, as the blood Buddha appeared, the entire starry sky boiled. Xianxia's lips curled up. Starfall. He immediately unleashed his ultimate move. In the depths of the starry sky, countless rays of starlight shot down. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Yuan Yan's eyes. He suddenly raised his head and punched. Behind him, the Buddha statue also punched out at the same time. In an instant, a golden fist engulfed the entire starry sky. In another part of the starry sky, Zhou Xian was still cultivating. During this period of time he had been studying the life and death sword technique and the sword drawing technique. Now his life and death sword technique and the sword drawing technique could be stacked up to 300 times. 300. If he used the power of his bloodline he would be able to obtain even more. If he slashed down with his sword now it would really be able to destroy the world. In fact, not only could he decide life and death with his sword, but he could also decide life and death with a single sword. Just his one sword determining life and death was enough to instantly kill a Heaven Ascension tier. Not only that, his one sword determining life and death could even pose a great threat to Immortal Severing tier. Of course, what he wanted to do now was not to kill Heaven Ascension tiers, but to instantly kill Mortal Severing tiers. It was an instant kill. Right now, it was completely possible for his sword drawing technique to instantly kill a Transcendence Realm elite. Apart from that, he was also studying the words his father had once said. Space is limitless and eternal. Time is endless and eternal. He decided to start his research on space. Space, limitless and eternal. Zhou Xian fell into deep thought. A moment later he said softly, space is boundless and eternal. In other words, space is boundless and will exist forever. At this moment, a surprised voice suddenly came from the side. You actually know that the space is limitless and eternal. Zhou Xian turned around and saw a woman standing not far from his right. Zhou Xian blinked. Miss, you also know that the limitless realm exists forever? Mu looks at Zhou Xian. I'm surprised that young Master Yi actually knows about it. Can young Master Yi tell us where you got this information? Zhou Xian smiled and said, I figured it out myself. In the prison pagoda, Xiao Ta kept shaking his head. It's over. Little Lord was completely shameless. Mu smiled and said, young Master Yi must be joking. Zhou Xian said seriously, you don't believe me? Mu looks at Zhou Xian. Young Master Yi, this is impossible for you to comprehend by yourself. That was because this sentence represented a martial arts civilization that far surpassed the modern martial arts civilization. Young Master Yi, this is not just a sentence, but a manifestation of a higher level of martial arts civilization. Zhou Xian said, I comprehended it myself. He and Mu were momentarily speechless. He had seen thick-skinned people, but he had never seen someone so thick-skinned. Zhou Xian suddenly laughed and said, Miss, are you a demon beast? Mu nodded, I'm from the demon race. Zhou Xian glanced at Mu, then smiled and said, Miss, you're so beautiful. I've never seen such a beautiful demon. Xiao Ta. Mu glanced at Zhou Xian. Thank you, young Master Yi, for your praise. Young Master Ye's attitude towards the demon race surprised me. Zhou Xian laughed. Whether it's the demon race or the human race, in my opinion, we are all creatures of this universe. If we can coexist peacefully, that would be great. Mu smiled and said, it's very difficult. Zhou Xian nodded. It's indeed very difficult. But miss, this time it seems like it's your demon beast race causing trouble. Mu smiled slightly. It's not that simple. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? Yu Mu looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, are you here to help the Yuan realm? Yi Xian said, I'm here to help the Yi race. My father has a good relationship with the Yi race. After a moment of silence, Yu Mu said, Young Master Yi, can you give up on meddling in the Yuan realm's matters? Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm afraid not. Yu Mu shook her head. Young Master Yi, I know your background isn't simple, but the Yuan realm's matters are far from as simple as you think. Especially this Yi race, At this point she didn't continue speaking. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What are you trying to say? Yu Mu smiled and said, Young Master Yi, why don't you go to my demon beast race first? Then you can decide if you want to meddle in the Yi race's matters. How about it? Yi Xian thought for a moment and nodded. Sure. Yu Mu smiled slightly. Young Master Yi, follow me. With that she turned and left. Yi Xian followed. Yi Xian followed Yu Mu directly to the depths of the Demon Beast Mountain range. On the way, Yi Xian turned to look in the direction of the Great Wall of Heaven mountain range and said, You've already started attacking the Great Wall? Yu Mu smiled and said, Just for fun. Yi Xian glanced at Yu Mu and didn't say anything. Under Yu Mu's lead, the two of them came to a stone city. Yu Mu brought Yi Xian to a large hall, and at this moment, there were many demon and beast race powerhouses gathered in the hall. When they saw Yu Mu bring a human in, all the demon and beast race powerhouses were stunned. Yi Xian took a look inside the hall and very quickly his expression darkened. The beast and demon race powerhouses in the hall were all at least at the mortal severing realm. And in the entire hall, there were a total of 76 mortal severing realm powerhouses from the demon race and beast race. Moreover, these mortal severing realm powerhouses all had mortal bodies. In other words, humans needed 3 mortal severing realm powerhouses to fight against a demon beast with a mortal body. That was a bit of a crushing defeat. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man suddenly said, Miss Yu Mu, who's this person by your side? Yu Mu smiled slightly. Demon King, this person is young Master Yi. He wants to come and have a look. Young Master Yi. All the demon beasts exchanged glances. I've never heard of him. Yu Mu gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi, sit by my side. As she spoke, she sat at the seat of the host and the Demon King's seat was on her right. Obviously, she wanted Yi Xian to sit on her left. All the demon beasts within the hall had slightly strange expressions on their faces. Yi Xian naturally wouldn't hold back and he immediately sat on Yu Mu's left. The Demon King glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. The demon beasts within the hall wanted to say something, but they didn't dare. Yu Mu suddenly said, Demon King, please continue. The Demon King glanced at Yi Xian again, wanting to say something but hesitating. Yi Xian smiled. You guys talk, I'll pretend I didn't hear anything. All the demon beasts. The Demon King's expression became a little strange. Where did this silly human come from? Was he here to be funny? Yu Mu smiled. Demon King, please continue. As for young Master Yi, since I allowed him to come, it means that he can listen to anything. The Demon King nodded slightly, then said, What the Hall of Books means is that they only want the divine level spring of eternal life. Other than that, they don't want anything else. Divine level spring of eternal life. Yi Xian frowned and looked at Yu Mu. The primordial realm has a divine level spring of eternal life? Yu Mu smiled. Yes. It's in the hands of the Yi clan. Yi Xian said solemnly, Don't they only have the saint-level spring of eternal life? Yu Mu smiled. Of course they wouldn't dare to expose it. Yi Xian's expression darkened. Divine-level spring of eternal life. A saint-level spring of eternal life was enough to make countless forces go crazy. And a divine-level spring of eternal life. Unimaginable. If the Yuan clan and the Shao clan knew that the Yi clan had a divine-level spring of eternal life, they would definitely not help the Yuan clan defend the Yuan realm. They couldn't defend it. Not only would they not defend it, but the two clans might also escape. A divine-level spring of eternal life would attract a huge disaster. He didn't expect the Yi clan to have a divine-level spring of eternal life. At this moment he finally understood why Yi Yuan went to ask his father for help. Because Yi Yuan knew that if the Yi clan wanted to have this divine-level spring of eternal life, they needed a strong backer. Obviously his father was qualified to be their backer. But what about himself? What about himself? Yi Xian's face darkened. Damn it. His father could deal with these top forces but he couldn't. And his father might also know about this, which was why he said there was a little trouble. No. The little trouble that his father said was far more than this. It might be even more complicated. Damn it. I've been tricked. Zhou Xian suddenly wanted to escape. Mu suddenly said, "What does the Divine Temple think?" The Demon King said solemnly, "They are determined to get it." Zhou Xian said solemnly, "Does the Divine Temple also want this divine-level spring of eternal life?" Mu smiled. "Of course, because even the Divine Temple and the Book Hall don't have a divine-level spring of eternal life. And the main reason why they didn't destroy the Yi clan was because the Divine Temple and the Book Hall didn't come to an agreement with us. As long as they came to an agreement, we could destroy the Yuan realm with a flick of our fingers." Zhou Xian looked at Mu. "Even the Yuan clan and the Shao clan?" Mu nodded. "The Yuan realm has 12 divine-level spring of eternal life, be it the Divine Temple or the Book Hall, or the Beast Demon race, they are all tempted." Zhou Xian said solemnly, "Isn't Yuan Yen from the Divine Temple?" Mu smiled. "Young Master Yi, do you think 1 Yuan Yen is worth 4 divine-level spring of eternal life? 4 divine-level spring of eternal life is enough to nurture at least 200 mortal severing realm experts, maybe even more." Zhou Xian was silent. Mu said again, "Young Master Yi, it's better not to get involved in this mess." Zhou Xian looked at Mu. "I have a question. Why does the Yi clan have a divine-level spring of eternal life?" Mu smiled. "This is what we are curious about. You can ask Yi Yuan." Zhou Xian nodded. He got up. "I'm going back to the Yuan realm." With that, he turned into a sword light and disappeared. In the hall, the Demon King said solemnly, "Miss Mu, what is this person's background?" Mu chuckled and said, "A person with an extraordinary background. It would be best if we don't become enemies with him." The Demon King nodded slightly, not saying anything else. Yuan realm in a hall. Yi Yuan looked at Zhou Xian in shock. "Young master, don't you know that the Yi clan has a divine-level spring of eternal life?" Zhou Xian was shocked. "Why do you think I know?" Yi Yuan was also shocked. "Didn't the sword master tell you?" Zhou Xian frowned. "Father knows." Yi Yuan said, "Of course the sword master knows. The reason why the Yi clan can have a divine-level spring of eternal life is all because of the sword master, because he was the one who let the little white guy help us improve our sacred-level spring of eternal life." "Yi Xian," Yi Yuan continued, "at first I was also worried that having a divine-level spring of eternal life would bring about a disaster. However, the sword master said that if the spring of eternal life of my Yi clan broke through, he would send people to help my Yi clan. Weren't you sent by him?" Yi Xian's face was very dark. Yi Yuan hesitated, then said, "Young master, you are very strong, right?" "Yi Xian," Yi Yuan said again, "Yi He girl said that you can easily kill those above the mortal realm. You can do it, right?" Yi Xian. At this moment he really wanted to slap himself. "Who asked you to show off?" Chapter 1753. At this moment Yi Xian was extremely helpless. He was truly helpless. A divine-level spring of eternal life. He knew very well what it meant. It meant that countless forces would go crazy for it. How could he defend it? His father had actually asked him to come alone. That was a trap. Was he really his own son? He felt that it was necessary to do a paternity test. Damn it. This was too much of a trap. But now he wanted to run away. He really wanted to run away. However, if he ran away, what would happen to the Yi clan? He was slightly displeased if he didn't run away. Why should the good karma that was formed by a father be resolved by his son? Unacceptable. At this moment Yi Yuan smiled bitterly. "Young master, do you not want to care about this?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yi Yuan sighed softly. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "I can understand. If young master wants to leave." Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. "I will not leave." Yi Yuan looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. "The good karma that was formed between you and my father is my good karma. I will acknowledge what he did." Hearing this, Yi Yuan immediately stood up and bowed respectfully. He said excitedly, "Thank you, young master." In fact, he also knew what Dao Yi's divine-level spring of eternal life meant. An endless amount of trouble. He also wanted to give up, because he knew that a divine-level spring of eternal life was enough to destroy the entire Yi clan. However, because Sword Master Green had promised him that if the divine-level spring of eternal life broke through, he could look for him. Therefore he sent someone to look for Sword Master Green. A divine-level spring of eternal life could not be guarded by the Yi clan without a powerful backer. In fact, he himself did not expect that his actions would form a good karma with Sword Master Green and the little white fellow. And this good karma brought too many benefits to the Yi clan. Because the little white fellow did not just give the Yi clan one divine-level spring of eternal life. She gave 4 divine-level springs of eternal life many benefits. Now one of them was about to break through, which meant that the other 3 might break through as well. Once the Yi clan had 4 divine-level springs of eternal life. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Senior Yi Yuan, I'm a little curious about what you gave to Whitey." Yi Yuan hesitated for a moment, then said, "This is an ancestral spirit stone passed down by my Yi clan's ancestors. It contains extremely pure eternal qi." Then he paused and said, "I've never seen the purity of the aura of eternal life." Yi Xian asked, "You don't know what it is?" Yi Yuan shook his head, "I don't know." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Senior Yi Yuan, that ancestral spirit stone should be extremely precious, but you just gave it away." Yi Yuan laughed. "No matter how precious it is, it has no substantial effect on my Yi clan because my Yi clan has studied it for thousands of years and still hasn't been able to figure it out. Since that's the case, why don't we give it away to forge good karma?" Yi Xian smiled. He had to admit that this Yi Yuan was indeed very courageous. Most importantly, Yi Yuan had no ill intentions towards Whitey. At this moment Yi Yuan said in a low voice, "Young master, did you just find out that my Yi clan has a divine-level spring of eternal life?" Yi Xian nodded. Yi Yuan asked, "Where did you find out?" Yi Xian said, "The Beast Demon Clan." The Beast Demon Clan. Hearing this, Yi Yuan's face immediately sank. "I've already temporarily stopped it from breaking through and concealed its aura, but I didn't expect it to still fail." Yi Xian said, "That divine-level spring of eternal life still hasn't broken through?" Yi Yuan nodded. "If it breaks through, it will definitely cause a great commotion, so I've been telling it to suppress itself." Yi Xian said, "Can you take me to see it?" Yi Yuan nodded, "Of course." After that he opened his palm and a small black pot appeared in his hand. Yi Xian glanced at the black pot. "It's inside." Yi Yuan nodded. Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Let's go in and take a look." Yi Yuan brought Yi Xian directly into the black pot. Inside the small pot there was another world. Just entering the small pot, Yi Xian's face suddenly changed. The spiritual energy inside was too dense. At least 10 times denser than outside. Yi Xian turned to look at Yi Yuan. Yi Yuan said in a low voice, "If it breaks through, then the quality of its eternal life qi is at least 20 times higher than the divine-level spring of eternal life." 20 times. Yi Xian was silent. In other words, a divine-level spring of eternal life was equivalent to dozens of heavenly saint-level spring of eternal life, or even more. A divine-level spring of eternal life, its value was really immeasurable. At this moment in the lake not far from the 2 of them, a white dragon suddenly flew out. Boom. The entire lake directly surged. In midair the white dragon looked down at Yi Xian. Suddenly, it lowered its head and arrived not too far away from Yi Xian's head, and it spoke in a clear voice, "Human, you have Whitey's aura on you." Whitey. Obviously this white dragon was the divine-level spring of eternal life that was about to break through. Yi Xian smiled. "Whitey and I are very very good friends." A trace of excitement flashed through the white dragon's eyes. "Is that so? I'm Whitey's friend as well." "Since you're its friend, then you're my friend as well." Yi Xian roared with laughter. "What's your name?" The white dragon replied, "Ling Chu. Big Brother Sword Master gave it to me." Your bloodline seems to be similar to Big Brother Sword Master." Yi Yuan smiled. "Ling Chu, this is the young master. He's the Sword Master's son." "The Sword Master's son." Ling Chu blinked and then he said, "Big Brother Sword Master sent you to protect me?" Yi Xian nodded and smiled, "Yes." Ling Chu was clearly very happy, and she let out a dragon roar before circling around Yi Xian's head. It didn't take long for her to transform into a ray of white light that descended onto Yi Xian's shoulder. At this moment she transformed into a mini dragon that was only the size of a child's arm. Ling Chu wrapped around Yi Xian's arm and chuckled, "Your Big Brother Sword Master's son, so what should I call you?" Yi Yuan smiled, "Call me young master." However, Ling Chu shook her head, "No, young master doesn't sound nice. Why don't I call you Big Brother as well?" Yi Xian roared with laughter. Sure. Ling Chu chuckled. Big brother Yi Xian, who's stronger between you and big brother Swordmaster? Yi Xian instinctively said, Of course it's me. At this point he suddenly stopped. Damn it. Wait. I'm stronger than my father? I can't act cool like this. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly and said, Of course it's my father. Xiao Ta instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. Damn it. Young master still has some face. At this moment Yi Xian said, I'm just a little bit weaker than my father. Xiao Ta. On Yi Xian's arm Ling Chu blinked. Big brother Yi Xian is very powerful. Yi Yuan smiled. Young master isn't an ordinary person. He can even instantly kill experts above the mortal severing stage. Yi Xian. Ling Chu turned to look at Yi Xian with eyes filled with admiration. Is that true? Yi Xian hesitated. This. Yi Yuan and Ling Chu were both looking at Yi Xian, especially Ling Chu, whose eyes were filled with even more admiration than Yi He. Seeing the look in Ling Chu's eyes, Yi Xian felt dizzy and said, Of course. What's above the mortal severing stage? It's just one strike. Xiao Ta. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian suddenly regretted it. Damn it. I seem to be a little thick-skinned now. At this moment Yi Yuan suddenly said in a low voice, Young master, this matter isn't that simple, right? Yi Xian collected his thoughts and nodded. It's not simple. Not just the beast demon race but also the divine temple and book hall. Hearing this, Yi Yuan's face instantly turned pale. Divine temple. Book hall. This was a foreign force on the mountain. He hadn't expected that his divine-level spring of eternal life would attract such a force. Yi Xian was just about to speak when Yi Yuan said in a low voice, Young master, I've decided to hand Ling Chu over to you. Yi Xian was stunned and then said, What do you mean? Yi Yuan shook his head. Young master, I'd thought that it was just the beast demon race. But now that the divine temple and book hall have joined in as well, it isn't something that my Yi clan can resist at all. Yi Xian smiled. Even if you hand Ling Chu over to them, they won't let your Yi clan off. Yi Yuan was astounded. Why? Yi Xian said, The saint rank spring of eternal life in the origin world is their target as well. Yi Yuan's face fell when he heard this. Divine level spring of eternal life was precious, but saint rank spring of eternal life was extremely precious as well. Yi Xian smiled. It's not time to despair yet. Yi Yuan shook his head and laughed bitterly. Young master, you might not know much about these two powers. Both of them are extraordinary powers and their strength is unimaginable. I can't drag you down with me. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. Obviously, Elder Yi had slightly underestimated his father. Actually, this was normal. After all, there probably weren't many people in this world that knew exactly how strong his father was. Yi Xian restrained his thoughts and smiled. Elder Yi, if you don't want to drag me down with you, then what do you intend to do after I leave? Yi Yuan hesitated for a moment and then he said, Young master, I have a presumptuous request. Yi Xian asked, Tell me about it. Yi Yuan spoke in a low voice. Young master, please take some of the youths of my Yi clan with you. Yi Xian said, You intend to stay behind and fight them to the death? Yi Yuan laughed bitterly. It isn't that I want to fight them to the death. If their objective is really the saint rank spring of eternal life, then why not give it to them? But I know that these great powers will definitely pull out the weeds by the roots. Even if we give them everything, they won't let us live. Yi Xian smiled and was about to speak when a voice suddenly resounded from outside. Patriarch, the entire beast demon race has set out. All of them. Yi Yuan's expression instantly changed when he heard this, and he vanished on the spot. But in next to no time he appeared in front of Yi Xian once more. Moreover, Yi He and a young man were by his side. Yi Yuan gazed at the young man and Yi Lin kneel before the young master. Both of them were stunned. Yi Yuan suddenly roared furiously, Kneel. Both of them hesitated for a moment before they slowly knelt down, but they were stopped by Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Yuan suddenly knelt before Yi Xian. Young master, I know that the temple and book hall are very terrifying, and I really shouldn't have allowed all of you to be swept into this vortex. But I have no other choice. I beg you to save the lives of these two siblings. My Yi clan will repay the young master and sword master's great kindness in the next life.